time for Declare Your Independence with Ernest Hancock.
Believe me when I say we have a difficult time ahead of us. But if we are to be prepared for it, we must first shed our fear of it. I stand here without fear because I remember that I am here not because of the path that lies before me, but because of the path that lies behind me. I remember that for 100 years we have fought these machines. And after a century of war, I remember that which matters most. We are still here! Tonight, let us make them remember we are not afraid!
Yeah! No fear! No fear, no fear, no fear, no fear here and declare your independence of me, Ernest Hancock, from the Southern Desert west of Phoenix, with Phranq Tamburri on the Trump Report. Well, Trump always delivers, happenings. There's stuff be going on. We're going to talk about that with Phranq and see what he's got on his list first. Man, we got a bunch of stuff on Freedom's Phoenix, all the happenings that's going on. But damn, I'm worried. Get out of paper, man. Get your precious metals and whatever, and sit and cash and kind of sit there and wait for the bottom. Here we go. Bottom line. Here we go. Here we've been. Here we're going. The beginning is nigh. The beginning is nigh. The end is nigh. Well, there's all, it's the beginning of what? I don't know. Frank's going to tell us. What's up, Phranq?
Must be well, first, welcome back, audience, for more torture, the Trump Report. I must be a really slow news week in the apocalypse occurring, because Ernie, that was one of the quickest trade-offs or handoffs I think I've had on the show. So I don't know. Are you feeling okay today, Ernie? Feeling okay?
I was out all yesterday, doing stuff, we went to the supper club meeting thing, and I got another shipping container and deal with that. Got some windows, doing the build. But when I get back, and this morning I get up and I see the news that Donna had put up yesterday while I was gone, and I'm going, holy crap. It's like when instead of me going through and doing all my research and sending the staff to put up, you see the postings by, a lot of people. It's a lot of Donna, but a lot of the Freedom's Phoenix 4 and Robert Lee and so on. That's stuff that I send staff and they put up. So, it's like I have an input, but when I don't for a day, they put stuff up. I don't see. I get shocked like everybody else does when they get the email dispatch. And I go, well, what happened? Holy crap. Another day in clown world. I mean, I'm wow.
I know. It's just ratcheting on all sides. I was just telling my better half, I was driving her to work as I do. And you're just talking about how the economy issues are getting more pronounced and just building and building. Not just another story, but they're compounding on each other. And that's the quickie version for a lot of our educated audience about many different things. So it's the repo market, whether it's some of these banks that are already failing. We'll talk about precious metals, about crypto, about just the one thing about the economy in general is we often say that you're early when it's just the crazy libertarians who are seeing this. Dr. Ron Paul and all of us, at least the way people look at us, like, man, what are you talking about? It's not enough gold for everyone, and America's too big to fail. And we heard all this for decades, right? And then, of course, I've always said for years, I've said on your show when we first met, which is when your grandmother starts talking about telling you that to buy gold and silver or something, the gig's up. That's probably the time to sell yours when the Mad Money guy is finally talking about it. So and as funny or flippant as that is, it's true, and you start to see this. So suddenly you start to see maybe not regular folk, but you'll have someone like Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson's never really been associated with the Austrian movement or talking about the economy. But it was like 5 years ago now? I guess COVID at least throws everything off. When he had Peter Schiff on his show back when he was at Fox. I'm like, wow. Remember, I think you and I did a whole show. We thought the Earth stopped spinning. Tucker's platforming. Peter Schiff talking about the economy. So now you're entering another level, right? You're starting to get to the grandmas and grandpas watching Fox News. Not that probably most of them understood all of it or took it seriously, but you're at another level, right? And through the last number of years, now you're getting, I've had how many friends call me in the last 2 weeks asking my advice suddenly, not because I don't have time for it anymore, about how to buy gold, how to buy silver. Another guy's asking me about what I think about some Bitcoin YouTube channel. He suddenly wants to get into Bitcoin now. Like he just heard about it. We heard about it, but now he's getting nervous about the economy, right? So that's another flag when like the normies in your world start to do it. And then of course we're a step away from grandmas starting to figure it out. So it's a bit flippant, a little tongue in cheek, but it is true, and I'm sure everyone listening to me, as you're running into that as well. More and more normies, and of course Ernie and I always talk about. You always take pictures and take a look at the guys on the street corners spitting the "We Buy Gold" signs. That's the ultimate canary. We're still tracking that, but there's also some changes like with silver. Silver was just made a critical mineral, a critical element, metal, just recently. It may or may not be the reason why silver just popped up again the other day. I know gold did too. We can get into the pedantic part of the prices later, but it's the fact that they're making it a critical metal. How much of that is necessary? How much is that political? How much of that is subversion of certain things? Like, for instance, when it's a critical metal, what new powers does the government have over the metal, over us that have the metal? As an example, when it's critical, it's not just, something that we should have. It's critical for our military so we can keep bombing the world, or for the AI machines that they want to use to dominate. So, you kind of wonder about that. I'll play later on. It's a quick little clip from that lady who does the gold one of the gold shows, and she goes over the 5 ramifications of making it critical. But it allows a quicker, hopefully less regulation for the mines, so their mines can go a little quicker, which of course to me is the main issue. But it also allows more transparency / surveillance over the silver industry, which of course precious metals are often about privacy, right? So you start running into that. Regardless, silver being critical or being recognized fits into what one of our discussions was last week or so about the critical, well, not critical, I would say exotic metals, but the rare earth metals. They say rare earth. I'm used to saying exotic, but the exotic metal markets, of iridium and ruthenium and silver and gold and all these others. I think that's such a major issue that the administration is dealing with. I think they didn't realize that was a time bomb problem until they took over the administration this time. That's my personal opinion. I think it was depleted, not to mention it wasn't not on people's radars. And I think China, of course, is manipulating and lying about how much that they really have. And of course, Trump thinking he had the cards, with foreign policy, which he didn't know how many he did not have. And that's a whole other thing about Trump and his some of his bravado and missteps that have been just profound this past year. I will definitely address that later. I want to do a 1-year review of Trump's administration since it's been basically a year. And that's going to be kind of epic. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But all of that is Trump overplaying his hand with China, and China just said, screw off, right? Like didn't realize how much, I think a lot of Americans have been have their head up there, what, for so long. A lot of it through economics, a lot of it through military power, a lot of it culturally. Ernie, you heard it right. Is this culture of like America is number one and the whole world bows down to us. And when you travel, you live overseas, you start to see how the rest of the world is. And America's really lost its luster. It's only. I always just to use that comparison again. It reminds me of I think it was Superman 3. Remember Superman 3? No one ever watched that one. But like Clark Kent goes back to Smallville, and I forget the name of the guy who was a jerk to him in the first movie. Who was trying to date his girlfriend, was making Clark Kent, clean the gym room or something. And then of course, when Clark comes back to the reunion, Clark Kent is a reporter for the Daily Planet, and the football guy sitting there drinking beers with a pot belly, and he still thinks that he's the stud from the football games. And that, to me, is how I think America, especially the deep state, sees itself. They're on rails. They have their own community. They have, they're above the law. Epstein, we'll talk about that later. But I think that they don't understand that that they don't have the cards in which they do. And a lot of it, though, is just cultural, to be honest. And the arrogance that we have the world's, with the IMF, international money, and we can just print it up whenever we want. So that's just been such a toxic poison. When you're addicted to meth and you've got your own meth lab in the backyard, you can just make it up whenever you want. That's a bad recipe, and that's kind of where overall that we're at. But the exotic meth.
It's a good way of putting it. You got your own meth lab, and you're a meth addict. What do you think you're going to do?
Yeah, you're like Walter White, Jesse. So you've got that, and so I think the exotic metals, which is kind of an interesting way to tie all these things together. That's how I see it. Obviously, I'm a little bit biased because I play in, like a lot of us, we deal with commodities and understand that part of economics, plus administrations and place in the world, and a lot of us understand technologies, and it's kind of an interesting nexus point. But it's a nexus point that I've always been interested in, and isn't it interesting that seems to be dominating the Trump administration over the last 6 months, where suddenly he's running around the world, just acting a bit odd in many ways, and we'll get to that with that one-year summary I'd like to do with you later on the show. But anyway, I think the exotic metals are really a spotlight, even though the administration doesn't want to talk about it much. But every time you go somewhere, you just hear about these exotic metals, rare earths. It's in every negotiation. Everything is running around. I think there's a major problem with this about our standing, and either that we don't have enough, which I'm sure is a large part of it for a lot of reasons, regulatory, green energy stuff, blah, blah, blah. But a lot of it is, I think, the outmaneuvering that the BRICS nations, and especially China, buying up the mines in Africa and everything else has happened. I mean, just think about it. We talked about Disney going woke. Well, that came out of left field. Or he's thinking, how does that tie into this?
Well, another story going up today, Disney is plummeting. They,
Oh,
again.
yeah, I know. And that relative in my family who keeps laughing at me every time Disney stock goes down for the last 6 years. I told him 6-7 years ago not to buy it. I said, just wait till it drops in half if you're going to buy it at all. That was my advice to him at the time, because he had no clue just how toxic the pipeline of Disney stuff was. So anyway, not to get into the Disney thing as much, although I broached it. It's because guess who actually really hated a lot of the Disney stuff and all the woke stuff? It was people in Africa. The countries and cultures in Africa were truly repelled by this woke stuff. Now, most people don't care about Africa or any other country.
They're manly men.
American. Yeah. I mean, they're it's a whole different culture in itself, and it's a foundational culture, and it's like they got their own issues dealing with warlords and whatever else, and dealing with dengue fever and and syphilis infections that get into whole communities and blind them. And I mean, Ethiopia, they deal with this kind of stuff. They're not going to worry about pronouns and having men dressed up as women in bathrooms. Like, it's just so far gone America's so lost its way with its head up its butt. So now you have Africa, and you start to see a culturally conservative backlash to anything Western, especially American, in Africa, right? We covered it on the show. How many of these different administrations in Africa, some of these kings and whatever, a lot of them, they have like 50 princes and all this. But anyway, they're all, they've been now more, I don't want to say radicalized, but let's just say they're starting to put up the barriers to American influence and culture. And that culture also has led to not trusting Americans in general. And here comes a more manly culture, the Chinese, the Chinese and the Russians, who are sitting there basically having anti-woke policies in their government. Remember, we talked about that, how the Chinese government were now making schools to teach men to be men. right? Like men are going to be like manly. They're going to like go into man camp. That's what they're doing in China. They've been doing this for the last 10 years. I remember covering that back in your old studio. So they're the opposite of it. So now you got, why am I bringing all this up? Disney, woke, Africa. Well, why? It's because Africa has all the damn mines. They have the majority of the mines. There's a few scattered other countries have, metals, but Africa is it's like the Saudi Arabia for oil. It is for the minerals. And China has been just cozying up to them this whole time. So as we're doing wokeified Pixar Disney movies, and, we're having our own, pissing match in America over pronouns and whatever, people have no understanding outside of our nation. When you get into other countries, other cultures, how just it's like rat poison to these people, and it affects foreign policy. I know it sounds silly. I'm not trying to blame our military is going to collapse from lack of iridium, because of some woke Disney movie. I mean, that's kind of a stretch, like the butterfly effect. But you kind of see, that's how I see this tapestry, because I know they've talked about it. I've watched parliament meetings and just political meetings and discussions from Africa with the Chinese, with the French, because a lot of French territories still over there, or at least there were. So I'm kind of interested in some of these international issues, and it keeps coming up, dealing with the mines, and where the control or the influence of Africa. So anyway, that's just one example. And then you have the Dore, which I always forget the name of it, and I apologize to the audience. I've always forgotten the name, but the term Dore, a lot of you know what I'm talking about. That's the slurry or first pass, maybe second pass of the mud from mining. So when you mine and you get it's like the prime mud, right? It has to go through forms of refinement, and there's a bunch of processes. Ernie and I had the privilege, along with Don and Savarda, we went out to an actual mining group that did it as a hobby. We were out in the desert for like a whole day, digging like a swimming pool size hole that just refined. Went through the whole process. It was a great day. I learned a lot. Thank you, Ernie, for inviting me to that. I still have a little bit of a couple gold.
Yeah, no, I still got. So we got
day.
What happened. It was a Ron Paul guy that was part of a co-op, a group of guys that would go out mining. Well, in north of Phoenix, it's called Black Canyon City. Black Canyon is just, mountains out in the middle of something that has a road down to the dry riverbed. Because there's no rain and water, they use air. So it has puffs of air. Instead of water flowing, it puffs the air, and it lifts the lighter stuff, and the gold stays behind. And he had a bunch of Ron Paul army out there. We were digging under rocks and just shoveling up the material for them. I remember we're down there, and in a crevice of this one rock, I go, there's a nugget. And I go, look, a nugget. And then the guy had a vacuum cleaner, and he was going around getting it. Boom, sucked it up. It's gone. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Because that was the deal. They get all the nuggets, And
yeah.
So then we spiraled it, and processing it and everything, and we all got, little vials of gold. Now, that gold, at that time, I'll bet is worth, I don't know, probably thousands now. What we probably got between all of us over a day and a half, maybe half an ounce or something like that. It wasn't that much, but that's like real money now, So I took all of that, my share, and I melted it down into a drop about half the size of a dime. You have to use a blowtorch. I thought gold was more malleable. I thought you could pound that into like a sheet, gold leaf or something. I could coat some stuff for Don I was working on. It is not. I mean, it's softer than like steel. You hit it with a sledgehammer and you'll dent it, but it's not near as soft as they make out. It's much more resilient than I thought. And so we learned a lot from that. We had a lot of fun. I think it was like March, so it was getting kind of warm, but it was nice. And we had our other RV, the Gypsy booth, that we had out there. I was amazed that thing made it down there. And we had a lot of fun, but for it to process gold, you can see how much effort and work it goes into doing it.
Exactly. And that's diesel. That's right. We had the generator going. the amount of work. I mean, it was backbreaking work, and especially you get a taste for what the old panhandlers did back. Is that the word? Panhandler? Whatever. The guys shifting for gold back, the 49ers and all of that. And granted, it was a lot more surface back then. There was going in streams and finding raw gold. It was a lot easier, but still, you get a taste for it, and you take that and you put that into industrial scale, and you get a sense of what the value of gold is, or what it should be, or what precious or any kind of metals are. We've gotten so spoiled for a whole bunch of economic and geopolitical reasons about metals, but when you really come down to it, I mean, the metals are literally the building blocks of everything. I was thinking too, like if you were going to be looking for jobs of the future, not to get off topic too much, but they talk about to learn to code. Boy, that's going out the window. But now granted, AI might take both of these over as well. But one of them,
get my optimist go gold mining my land.
No, exactly. I'll be out there. So I mean, like one is biotech. That's an area that a lot of people don't realize. If you understand biotech, it's like finance. If you know international finance, you always do pretty well. Again, AI aside here. And then, of course, biotech. It's just if you just start to understand both the tech world and the bio world, and the advancements and what's coming down between cybernetics and all sorts of things. Huge money in biotech. I think that's the new Silicon Valley tech world. It's the biotech world, and it's just about to burst, in my opinion.
Yeah,
and then
there's
the
a
other
lot of stuff coming.
Yeah, there's a lot of there. And Freedom's Phoenix, I mean, you cover a lot of that. You put it on Freedom's Phoenix. But the other one that I think is, I don't want to say equal, but on par with those, like international finance, Austrian variation, let me just put that one out. And then, of course, biotech. But the third would be mining and mining science, which is, it's been something that people just, hobbyists went into it. Like, oh, I'm in the mining or something, or the big oil rigs.
No, people need to understand a simple thing. Any and everything that you have, everything that's in front of you, everything that in nature is either grown or mined. That's it.
Everything. And yet the fact that we're a service-based economy, and the modern monetary theory has the concept that it's okay to be a service economy. Let the other third world make things, which is why people have been screaming about bring our industries to America. And people like Schiff and Erwin Schiff and, Charles Goyette and Ernest Hancock and, half this audience, we all know that an economy is driven by production, not consumption. But it's been flipped on its head the last 100 years that consuming that's how you have to drive an economy. Just spend more, right? Then
No. They want you to go in debt more. They want you to pay a little bit of interest to somebody else for you getting the money to get your, G.I. Joe with the Kung Fu grip for your kid for Christmas or something. I mean, debt. We just had a story that's going up later. Apartment rents are going down like 20%. They have overbuilding and so on, and it's starting to crack. And can see. I mean, I've been since forever, but at least for the last month or so, I've been screaming to my kids and friends, get out of paper. And when I mean paper, I mean have some cash on hand, whatever. But get out. If it's on a computer screen, or it's you get a statement paper in the mail from your bank, or you have whatever it is. If it's on paper, yeah, you're worth this much. No, you're not. They're coming for that too. We have a story coming on the front page of Freedom's Phoenix.
I have a question. I have a quick question. Donna, because she's in real estate still, does she tap into that market? What's her take with the real estate around here, rentals and real estate? Is she still watching it?
Wait.
In the Arizona?
Wait, it's coming. Because the kids.
All right, go.
Most of our kids, two of our kids own their homes. The other two sold their homes, got, big giant, thank you very much, put that in precious metals and different investments and rent. And then what happens is now, of course, they got to get a house. And we're just, and of course they have Donna go look at the gazillions of houses and everything. And I'm just, man, I do what you want, but I'm just saying, man, that's a mistake. Don't do it now. And then as this starts to go, I'm going, oh, it's getting time. Make sure you get your resources up, make sure you have, but then the interest rates go from like nothing, 3% or whatever, up to 7-8%. Well, on a $500,000 house, at 3%, you're paying, I don't know, a few $100,000 in interest, which is a lot. But when it goes up, that same house, over $1 million in interest. And then, especially if you do this 50-year mortgage thing. And I'm going, no, hell no, 30 years is, I remember it used to be, hell, you paid cash for houses, back in the day. But it is so ripe to go. Big shopping malls are just deserts now, and they're starting to sell them for pennies on the dollar to do, I have no idea. They're going to be retirement homes or something, stationary cruise ships or I don't know whatever the hell they're going to do with them. But this is, it's happening right, not later. And I don't know, because like what you say, we are in such a consumerist mindset. Well, then I can go buy that and I can go buy that. Anything that I buy is, long term, we pay cash, and then it's tools or use for building on what we want in the future. And that mindset, it took a lot. I went through the same thing. We got to have, we want to buy, we got to get, we got, to keep up with the, I don't know, standard of living to which I wish to become accustomed. But I'm really enjoying it on the land here. Now, the one thing that I suggest to people, you gotta have the real basics. Don't be too hot. Don't be too cold. Don't be too thirsty. Don't be too hungry. Have a T-shirt on your back or something. But this is, if you look at it that way, and the bus, our love bus, takes care of like 90% of that. So we're able to use it as a base to build all the other stuff. Next Thursday, I got to go out after today and create a new pad to go with the other shipping container and then put a roof between, all that kind of crap. So I got plenty of work to do. But the point is that if you occupy the land, and it could be anywhere, a little something, I don't care. That's not, and what you build, that doesn't even matter. It's self-sufficiency. It's the ability to get off of this grid, because this grid is not only a surveillance grid, but why do they need a surveillance grid? Because they don't want you to be a non-complier. You're not, inspiring other people to get above the grid. You're not going to be able to get out of debt. We want you in. It's a banking thing. So that's represented in what? Inflation, gold and silver, precious metal prices, assets. So we had have a story going up. Burry, the guy that did The Big Short and predicted that, and the star of the movie, and Christian Bale played him, and all that stuff. He just announced. There was a lot of things. He's selling this. He's doing this. He's doing that. Finally today, he just goes, "I'm out." It's so over everywhere. There's nothing you can do. He's saying what Ernie was saying. Get out of paper. So he's getting out. And he's parking himself over. I'll wait. This is when a lot of fortunes are made. People that have enough resources to really stock up when everything's at, 20% or whatever it was before. That's a crash. It's a crash. And we're worried about the petrodollar. That's going. It's done. The discussion group last night had Students for Liberty, one of the head influencer, has a YouTube site. He's visiting in Arizona, and he came up and did a presentation that was interesting about trying to get the youth, Now, of course, our friend Alan Corwin, writes a lot of gun books and so on, he's always critical about you're doing it wrong. And he was more worried about, your numbers are, you just get a few thousand, a video, you get this and you get that. That's not really, and he goes, we have 400,000 subscribers, and that's not really our goal. Our goal is reaching the people we can that are inclined towards libertarian Austrian philosophy kind of stuff as students, senior in high school through college, and then they go and find all the others of like mind to build up this philosophy, this influence of freedom. And but your numbers, they're always low. It's freedom. There's not a big giant government push and subsidize of freedom. That's not where that goes. So then the Arizona Project kids were there too. So we're going to be doing them within a week because they got to go back. Every year they bring these kids from all over the world. This is, Nepal and Chile and Argentina and Estonia and Poland and Ukraine and all this kind of stuff. Well, they have 6 of them here now. Well, we're going to be interviewing them. Instead of doing one at a time, we're going to take a couple hours and do all of them so we can get them all in because they're real tight on schedule. And every time we do one, they got to go shooting. Well, I said, you guys do shooting yet? Oh, yep, we got that covered. They already been twice, and man, they're all shooting up. I remember the one young girl from Nepal, how she came to prominence is she wrote an essay in college, an article about arranged marriages and how it was a patriarch society that did whatever. Well, that didn't make her fans of the government. That they definitely didn't want to hear anything about feminism or whatever they thought she was doing. But when she came here, she was taking pictures. When we took her out to the gun range, she was all happy about, "Ooh, man, I project my will with this here AR or AK or whatever, man." Put that up on her Facebook. The country of Nepal threatened her. She couldn't come back till she took that down. When she left, there was another woman from Nepal there last night. I said, "Can you check on her and see what happened to her?" As last I heard, I think they forced her into a forced marriage, an arranged marriage. And I'm like,
really?
That's the last I heard that's what they were trying to do. So I don't know what happened. We'll find out. But this changed over the last couple of years. That now when they put the gun thing up, whatever, they're not getting as much pressure. They're getting more support. They're starting to understand the power in the American psychology that we have the ability to resist. Whether Biden comes up and says we got M16s and F-16s, we'll kick your ass. There's still that, but they still see the psychology behind. I guess one of the few, certainly the only one that I know that has entrenched in their founding documents the ability to bear arms for this reason. So that in itself is penetrating the world. They all have this comment, and I'm going, really? That's why the gun thing is such an issue. It's not even really, I think, the guns as much as it is the psychology that people have. They even to think that you might be able to resist. It's all a psychological thing. And when Phranq goes on about culture, I keep going back, the culture of that. The culture of freedom, the culture of options, the culture of protecting individual rights. That's the culture. I don't give a crap what holidays you represent, or new cuisine I get. I don't care.
Yeah, but Ernie, the only difference in our opinion is that's maybe the culture that you want or I want. It doesn't always mean what it is. That's the only difference I make. It's not that I'm arguing with the concept of what culture I think is healthy for America, what built America and such, but that's different than what it might be. Now, you and I might
but when
disagree.
you advocate for a certain culture, it has to include that.
All I know is when I watch the news and I see the people around me and I interface with people, they don't understand what even that culture of freedom is. So that's all my argument is do we have it now and how do we get back to it, or is it even possible, or so that to me is the issue, and regardless whether it's freedom or not, which I think is the primary culture we should aim for, is that a country or a nation or a group of people will always devolve, or hopefully, maybe not devolve, but it finds homeostasis and peace amongst themselves when 51% or whatever, I'm not trying to grab a number, have a mutual culture. That's how you have homeostasis. Now, that's not it. That's a different argument than what the culture should be. You think I'm the one demanding it should be Eisenhower 1950s all over. I've never said that. You're the one that has a culture that you think it should be, and personally,
I want the one they promised. I want the one they wrote down. I want the one they declared.
Personally, but it doesn't mean I understand it's what they wrote down. I mean, there's all kinds of things, but it doesn't mean that's what it is right now.
I know.
And so, do we go back to it? Right, exactly. But that's a separate argument than just talk. Forget America. Imagine you're a UFO alien guy, and you're coming at you're National Geographic. I don't know which is worse, and you're sitting there just analyzing, a sociologist in some archipelago somewhere. And you're looking at a group of people, and you're studying their cultures, you're studying society. And when like two different cultures come together, they get reamed together, you get conflict until one takes over the other, or they assimilate and they intermarry or whatever. This is like basic stuff. It's not complicated.
Yeah, no. If I'm an alien and I come down,
go through.
You think you're not going to look at the founding of the governments and the philosophy of, and they go, that America thing is kind of interesting. It's pretty dominant. Why? Well, they had this promise. Well, how are they doing that? They violated the promise, the deal. They're lying sacks of snot, every one of them. But the promise was cool. The individual, and then it might be individual. What the hell is this individual thing? Well, that's a very Christian thing. You're not like Tucker Carlson goes on about, blood guilt, or ethnicity. It's us versus them because of the color of their skin or something.
Great point, Ernie. That was exactly what I was thinking. You continue, but yeah, that's the thing. That's what's driving. We'll get to, I guess, maybe now if you're bringing it up. But
well, like a collective. We have the new mayor in Seattle is, I don't know, 40-year-old woman that lived in her parents' basement for whatever, never had a job. Now she's mayor of Seattle. Was she advocating? Mondami stuff. We need to get free transport, public transit. We need, rent control. We need all these things that have not worked, never worked, won't work. But the alternative is what? Crony capitalism, pay to play. The promise it's not even on the table. So when Trump comes up and he's doing all these deals, I got a deal, we're going to make a deal, negotiating a deal, well, he's of the mind that he's willing and able and has done it to negotiate my rights away for some perceived whatever the hell it is that he wants. That is not principled. It's not anything. It's not conducive to a free society, and I don't think he cares. I'm not getting that impression. There's always a deal to be made. Yeah, we need more nuke generation. Yeah, you can put it near your factory, and I'll get the utility payers to pay for it or something. What? Now they're going after, in Ohio, they're going after the small farmers. We have a story up on Front of Freedom Phoenix today, and it's amazing what's going on. People that have their own little co-op farms and so on, the reason they said they had to have a license and permit was because they were too organized. Yeah, well, see, you got shelves and this and that. That's a little too organized, so we're going to, lay this restriction on you. And I'm like, wow, where's the individual freedom to choose there? The freedom for commerce, the freedom to sell, to buy, to be part. This is it. We are under attack at the most fundamental level. Housing, food, money, currencies, surveillance. This is the new world, not you. It's they, them, those. So I don't have a solution other than, I don't know, you try and beat them over the head with their own stick and run for office and all that kind of crap. But we're past that. It's not going to get fixed that way. It's just going to be those that survive. And the problem, I talked to guys from Yugoslavia when they went through all the wars and everything after the fall of the Eastern Bloc, and they broke up Yugoslavia into however many countries. And when that was going on, they said the people that were more remote, they were better off, early on, but eventually they found you. And if you didn't have, the freaking push-button ion cannon to defend or whatever, they took you over. They said, thanks for all the stuff, it's ours now. It was only the people, communities, like apartment buildings or neighborhoods that defended themselves just to wait it out. So I'm hoping that we're far enough away in the freaking desert that, all the zombie apocalypse people would be beef jerky by the time they get here. But I'm just, I don't know any other thing other than violence. War. That was one thing last night. Tucker was going on about, he was being interviewed by Megyn Kelly on stage, and it was the day that Dick Cheney died. So he didn't want to dump on him, the day he died, whatever. But his daughter, Liz Cheney, goes, I'd kill myself if I had her as a daughter. Whoa, that's pretty strong. And he apologized for that. He goes, when you're looking at Levine in, was it Tom Levine, whatever the guy is, Mike Levine or whatever, that talk show host that's always pimping for Israel, and going after Tucker. They're trying to cancel Tucker big time. And he's going, you're faced with that, and you start thinking that way, and you become them when you respond to it. He goes, that's what I'm trying to avoid. And I apologize for what I had said to Liz, even though I don't like her. But, to take myself down to that level, you become them, and you have no real example to strive for of being just a good guy and logically advocating for whatever. So this has been a really good. I like Tucker being there so far. We'll see what happens, but because I was never a fan of his back when he was Crossfire and back in the day, but he's changed. Yeah, that's what he says. He's come to logically come to the conclusion of, because he doesn't have a TV, he reads all the time, so the only thing that he knows is, what he studies and researches, and he's coming along. So you go, okay, well, who's against him? All of the people that are not for individual rights. It's collective rights. It's blood guilt. It's chosen people over unchosen people. It's people. It's groups. It's identity politics. This is a weapon that's being used against us. And I don't see on the horizon the individual right. The closest was what? On the major politics was what? Trump? That was it? Well, he's abandoning that concept in MAGA. They go, yeah, Tucker's not MAGA compared to what? You? It's over. It's more about really surviving. And you'll see more on Freedom's Phoenix. You see, it's 15%. Now it's like up to 25% that you have a lot of stories about, prepping, food storage, energy, battery systems, all this kind of stuff, because I'm of the opinion that's going to be way more important than who you vote for or that you even vote. We're in the beginning is nigh.
Hey, Ernie, are you getting, I want to comment on what things you said, but are you finding an increase in clicks in certain stories over others now? Like, are you seeing more clicks with solar panels off grid versus the ouch quit it stories of, Russiagate and things that we used to cover before? Like, do you track that? Do you see a movement and interest?
I can, but I don't. And that was a discussion last night on, a lot of the stuff like Students for Liberty are doing, because everybody go, well, if you this and if you that, and if you take this position, and when you send out your emails of this and so on, what kind of retention or action do you get from? And discussions like the YouTube shorts and TikToks don't get really any engagement of going to your site, or because they're just scrolling real fast. Yeah. But after a longer video, they are much more engaged and so on. And what I look at is I just see the total page views. It'll shoot up to like 60,000 in one day and as low as 5 some days, up and down, up and down. If I were to drill down, which I used to do decades ago until I found out that they were manipulating it. I'd have on the site some video 4409 did, and we get like 4,000 or 5,000 views on the site, and then YouTube says it was 400. I'm like, right, And so I just don't trust them, and they're trying to suck everybody back in. So we opened up. We're starting to post a show just here recently, in the last couple of weeks, starting to post a show on, Rumble and BitChute and Odyssey and YouTube and everything, and Occupy the Land videos and all that kind of stuff. Because when we went to the Ron Paul birthday in August, Luke Rudowski and, a lot of the guys, they were going, hey, man, it's starting to open up. You should come back. Or, all right, we'll open, because I've had all the channels and everything. I just never interacted with them. And I still don't, but we, post the stuff there. Well, once I started doing that, all of a sudden the traffic shot way up, and then it kind of settled down a little bit. But if I drill down into it, it's going to do exactly what I learned before. If you have Oprah Winfrey said, or Britney Spears' new belly button ring, or stuff like that. Oh man, you go get some clicks then. Man, that's what you need to be aggregating is all this I don't give a crap stuff, and I know way more about Kim Kardashian than I ever, wanted to. It was just by, not on purpose, it's just freaking headlines stream across everywhere you go online. So I'm just like, it's so controlled and manipulative, and that's how they do it. They want you, they'll do it with money too. Woo, if you do this, you're making more money. You're getting clicks and you're getting advertising. I saw it when we were doing talk radio here in the Valley. They would go to, the sales reps would go to all their advertisers. They would be, hey man, we don't like that Ernie. No, I don't want to be on his show. Heck, I don't even want to be on your station. I mean, I got a lot of pressure because we were out in the corruption. So what do? They do it with money. They do it with sponsors. They do it with, brought to you by Pfizer. So who are all the late night talk show? It's Fallon, it's Colbert, it's Stewart and all that. They're just big pharma guys. Now, regardless of what they say, brought to you by Pfizer, and they're amping up too. The pharmaceutical companies, man, you can't get away from anything, and you just replay the freaking symptoms as they've got little kids doinging through fields and so on about how you're going to die and death, dying, and destruction if you take it. But talk to your doctor about, who's going to talk to their doctor about, that's not why they do those commercials. They do the commercials to control the news coverage of the networks. You like this money? Well, you better not be talking about whatever. Alternative media influencers, when PewDiePie was just a gamer guy and he had like 60 million followers, they went after him big time to join the system. No, I'm not doing that. I don't want to do that. They tried to cancel him. I don't remember what happened to him, whatever. But it was obvious that they use clicks, they use money, they use whatever influence they can put on it to do it. $7,000 to influencers to say whatever about Israel. They're paying them $7,000 per post to get to their audience. And now we got a story coming up later that Netanyahu says, oh, we're working on, we won't need any more U.S. military assistance. Liars. Well, we'll see how that works. That's the new mantra, because everybody going, why are we paying for They're losing that battle. So they got to come out with, nope, we're going to be independent of, and kind of, well, maybe not the military, but they still give them billions of dollars to go buy military. So it's all a lie. And where do we get the truth, other than from Trump Report? Is you have to have a principled, logical way of looking at things and understand what is the end goal. Your team wins. You get to wear a team jersey, your blue or red, with your pennant, in the stands, or is there something else? Well, something more fundamental, more basic, individual rights. All you got to do is take care of that. Everything else takes care of itself. That's it. The freedom, against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Enemies to what? Trump's bottom line? His friends? He's got some friends that got invested in the Argentine peso. They're going to get their ass kicked, so he buy $40 billion of pesos. For what? Where's the individual rights? Where's the promises of like the Epstein files? Where? And what's amazing, he got a discharge petition. What that means is we've dealt with it here at the state level and everything too, but you do a bill and the Speaker of the House or President of the Senate, they have the power to hold it. They go, nope, we're not putting it up for a vote. It's not going getting the signed committee. We're not going to have it. We're not because we're not. Well, the alternative to that is they have what they call, it's kind of secret. You got to go in this room and you can't take any pictures, or you got to have a bunch of guys go in and memorize who signed it and who didn't, kind of thing. But you go in there and you sign a discharge petition and you get to a certain percentage. I don't know what it has to be, a lot, that you have the ability to bypass the speaker and bring it up for a vote. Well, that discharge petition is what they're signing, which is led by the Democrats to open up the Epstein files. And, once they do that and they vote on it, it's going to be open vote, who supported what or whatever. And I don't know if Trump has to sign that or not. If they come up with something, is he going to veto it?
Yeah, I know. Force them to veto. That's the ultimate say it. Veto.
Right.
There we go. Yep. So look,
I got to get this one that kind of goes in with this.
Yeah, go ahead.
FBI Chief Kash Patel's girlfriend, that is now, I don't know, she's 20, whatever, and dancer or something, files a $5 million lawsuit over somebody claiming that she was an Israeli intelligence agent. That they made that claim is one thing. She files suit against it. Kash Patel's in the middle of this thing. I'm like, what the hell? Here on the state level, here it is. Katie Hobbs, our governor, Democrat, was Secretary of State, stole an election in 24, in 20, whatever, okay? It was just messed up. No, it was 2022, I guess it was. But the 20, whatever, it was the last time she beat Carrie Lake. And Carrie Lake is now, I don't know, doing whatever in Europe with the Air America, the propaganda wing of whatever she's doing. But Katie Hobbs is being investigated for bribery, fraud, and conspiracy. What they got her on is hundreds of thousands of dollars they gave her to give a contract to something for something. And this has been long time waiting. It's well known here in Arizona. She's a functionary of, claimed that allegedly she's working with the cartels and the Secretary of State that gave her the ability for different property things that they were doing and recorded, yada, yada, yada. So that's coming out. What's going to happen to her? I have no idea. Don't care. And who's going to run? Now I got a call from Barry Hess. Barry has run for governor as a libertarian at least 3 or 4 times, and the Democrats are paying for him to get on the ballot this time to reduce the chances of Republican Congressman Andy Biggs from winning the governorship in 26 election cycle. They need the libertarian in there. They think it pulls votes from him. It may or may not, or well, I have no idea. But that's what they're going to do. They're going to fund him doing it. And they want to get an attorney general and a secretary of state. And the reason he was calling me, do I know anybody or will I do it or kind of, hell no. I'm so done. This is the midterm elections is coming up, and it's already started all the machinations behind the scenes. Now, we have covered this before. These guys are the activists for the progressive Soros money of whatever. And they get the money, and all they need is 100,000 here, 100,000 there, and this is how you buy America. And they're doing it at the city. You see New York and Seattle and everywhere else. And the county. County is all the clipboards and the health department and the building permits, and the guy comes with a clipboard and says what you can and can't do, kind of. So the county is a big part of this entire takeover nationwide. We saw that coming in the mid-'90s when they tried to do the regional government votes and all that stuff. And then the states, and then the country, and certainly congressional races, and how we got, Kelly and what's her name? Kirsten Sinema. Here you get they call it a purple state, Arizona. Bullshit. It is not purple. It's not blue. This has been very conservative, but they controlled the elections. And I know it. This is everything we've been screaming about for decades. I said, look, you can see what they're doing. And then they did it. And they go, wow, they did it. I go, yeah, seriously? What do you think I was telling you? So now I'm past that. We've done our part to where the truth button is there on your keyboard. The mathematics are coming home. The economy is going to do what it's going to do because it's math. And then what do? Well, they got to get more authoritarian, totalitarian, and Palantir. Peter Thiel, man, we're going to get those dissidents and show you what's up, and incentives. So here comes Bill Gates. He goes, it's going to be very inconvenient for you to operate in this society that we created for you, and you better get on board. Well, the people that say, I don't care, I'm not. Now what? Well, we're going to make it more inconvenient for you. Just saying. So I don't know how this is going to end, but I know how it begins, and it's starting now. It is a retraction from this system because it's such a disservice. And a lot of the youth have been convinced, certainly with, a decade of college indoctrination, they have been indoctrinated with the idea that government's got to fix it, and you got to get in and make them fix it. And socialism, that's a ticket. We're going to make them do what we want to do, as opposed to allowing you to do whatever you want to do and be productive or not. and it doesn't cost somebody else. It's not this the argument between positive and negative rights. Do I have a right to take your money to give me something that I want or need? This is the culture that I'm talking about. The culture of America that was promised, that was started, that is being eroded. And it starts at the family level and the separation of the children from their parents by the mandatory youth indoctrination camps, the government schools. If we don't learn our lesson, we're going to learn it. There's no getting around it. This is throughout human history. Read the Bible. The Bible's full of these stories. How this goes. So I am looking at Revelation, man. The 4 horsemen are mounting up. It's war, which causes famine, which causes pestilence, which causes death. I mean, it's just a philosophical document of this is how it goes. Well, here it comes, and now we got to make a decision. Do you take the mark of the beast? Do you put yourself on their grid? Are you going to be totally surveilled and controlled by the king? This is what's... And then who's out there screaming, no kings? The left, no kings! But we're going to put Seattle mayor and New York mayor in to be king. The way we want to be kinged. All right. You're going to get kinged. You're going to get crowned on the head. That's what's going to happen. So this is... And then they always need a war. Venezuela, we can have a war in this hemisphere. Yeah, what the shit, man? Let's go get us a war. What was the closest we had here before? The invasion of Panama? Oh, yay. But then what Russia going to do with Venezuela? How is that going to be? Then you get, who's conservative and who's not, and, this kind of argument, like, bring up, well, Maduro has, no trans, LGBTQ is not a thing. You have illegal abortions. You have. Well, but we don't like them, and we don't want. Well, it's because socializing the economy. Well, what the hell are we doing? So it's just so stupid, and that's why we're going to be talking to Arizona Project kids from around the world that are libertarians that come to Arizona every year. They recruit them, they come and they learn and whatever, because Arizona is supposed to be better. They like the shooting part, man, that's the thing. And then you have the Students for Liberty, Young Americans for Liberty. So that generation is what Charlie Kirk represented, and why they were so fearful of him. They were losing the young men. Well, they took him out, and then who rises up? Nick Fuentes! And what does he hammer on? Israel. So here comes Israel. You think without Fuentes and this issue coming up, that Netanyahu would be up saying, you know what, we're not going to be dependent on U.S. military anymore. Pinky swear. Yeah, right.
Oh, yeah. Well, I agree with all that. There's so much, as Sean Hannity likes to say, to unpack here. The first thing, before I lose it here, is as far as forgetting it, is let me just touch base quickly with the culture thing. And Ernie, I swear to you, I'm not trying to like poke you.
Where's the culture of freedom in your rant? I just want to know that.
No. This is just a serious deconstruction of a little bit more of this argument. A bit about. Look, I'm going to be clear again 1,000 times. Ernie sometimes misses this. Is I agree with you that I would like to have the culture of our founding fathers, and or at least even 10% of what it was in many ways, right? I get it. I've studied the Revolution. It's one of my favorite times of history. It's like I'm a little amateur historian of the Revolutionary War. Just like some people are in the Civil War, I'm just like all into the Revolutionary with General Benoit and, all of his exploits, chasing around Washington. There's just so many cool stories. But the history, kind of like the prodrome leading up to the revolution, I find even more interesting, especially when you live through today. And a lot of it also is I was bathed in Philadelphia culture. I was 6 years old when it was 1976. We had the first bicentennial. Well, like the first. We had the bicentennial. And it was just, the whole country was 4th of July crazy for the bicentennial. But Philadelphia was the epicenter. And by the way, I already invited you and Donna. I'm sure you saw that text I sent you. But I'm going to go back this year for the 250th anniversary, which is this summer. And, I don't go back to Philly or go back home, as we say, often, but a lot of my friends are all getting ready. It's summertime, which I rarely ever go to Philly in summer, or Pennsylvania, which is beautiful during the summer. I usually always go when it's Christmas and it's cold and crappy. But anyway, it's going to be a huge party in Philly. And I'm thinking of definitely going. And if you go, Ernie, I will take you to the City Tavern, which I love talking about. The City Tavern is right outside Independence Hall, where they created the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and everything in Independence Hall. You've all seen on TV. Heck, Joe Biden went up there and gave his red speech telling how much he hates half this country with those red lights right outside Independence Hall, of all places.
I got to bring that picture.
Right down the corner, literally. Yeah, that's a classic. But if you walk out Independence Hall and you go down the corner, right, and these are the old street cobblestone corners there in downtown, like the classic area of Philly, historical Philly. There's this old building. It's called the City Tavern, and I know Ernie's heard this story, but a lot of you haven't heard this. But it's the bar or the tavern where the founding fathers would go after they were busy arguing at the Independence Hall. It's kind of like what happens today in Congress. They argue in Congress and they'll go out for drinks afterwards. So the same sort of thing back then. A few of them probably went beforehand. probably Sam Adams. But anyway, they would all hang out there at the City Tavern. And also it's where elite people back in the day kept their recipes for their beers, because they each made their own draft brews or whatever, at their homestead, at their plantation, whatever. They had the one that was their recipe. And so they would bring their recipe with them and have like the local chef or the brewmeister, make up theirs, a cask. Because if they're going to be staying in Philadelphia for 6 months, they kind of miss their brew. But then what started happening is the founding fathers, or I guess a lot of people who traveled, they would start competing whose brew was better than the other guys. Like, they're already arguing Philly's better than Virginia and whatever. Like, oh, yeah, well, check out my beer. So it became like a pissing contest, literally. It's just kind of fun. And over the brews is when supposedly a lot of historians believe that the real debate about our culture and our not culture, but the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, all of this came about was at the City Tavern. So there's a lot of history in that place. And if you go today, there's no electricity, at least not that you see. It's still by candlelight, I believe. I don't think they've gone to the electric stupid candles yet. And there's everyone's in costume, and there's a guy walking around with a fiddle, and he plays a fiddle. I mean, it's a 5-star restaurant. It's pretty expensive to go to, but it's just a beautiful place to go. But anyway, offer stands. You go with me in Philly, I'm going to take you and Don out to there. But anyway, as far as the culture part, I just want to say I get so much culture and the Bill of Rights comes from a unique time of our independence, see, fighting the war. But what led to that, the prodrome, if you think about it, it's actually 200 plus years for Columbus or the Mayflower, all the way up to our founding of our country. So a lot of people miss
hundreds
this point
of years.
That hundreds of years, that if you think about it, that the founding of our nation in 1776 was really the nexus point, like the middle of a bow tie of this experiment. It was 250 odd years up to the revolution, and then it's been 250 years since. I mean, it's almost too perfect in timing. Like Benjamin Franklin would say, well, you have a country now, let's see if you can keep it, right? Well, we basically have lasted as long as it took from being British citizens under the crown and loving the crown to finally saying, screw it, and now we're 250 years later and we're back to the crown. I mean, I think there's something mathematical and poetic or fractal about that one. But we go back to literally 250 years to that time. Keep in mind that you have to really wrap your head around how independent people were. Just take Ernie Hancock and that's how everybody was back then. It's because you were living in the middle of nowhere. There was disease. There was mosquitoes. There was it was really, really a hard life. And for those of you that lived in the East Coast, just try traveling around and going to the forests back even during the summer. I mean, that's one of the reasons I moved to Arizona. A lot of you people listen to me know about the East Coast, and I love the East Coast, but It's hot and humid and the mosquitoes, and that's Pennsylvania. Forget going further south to Georgia or wherever else. I mean, it was real. You had to be born into it to get used to it and make it a lifestyle. But the British despised it. First off, they wore, let's say, the wrong kind of clothes for living in the colonies. You know, they were all with their wigs, and granted, we started wearing wigs too to try to copy them. But it was really tough for the British. They hated coming here. They really did. It was like the outback. And they were the noblemen and the rich. Now, they wanted to exploit the New World with tobacco and all sorts of things. And what they also did, this is interesting, is the divide and conquer, is that they kept, just like our media keeps us all divided, well, that's what kind of the crown, I don't know if they purposely did it, but each colony spoke, well, I know, I don't want to get too much into all this.
If they can.
Each colony, each colony would correspond with the king, with the crown, daily basis, shipping back and forth and trading and notes for government, for the governors of each of Virginia and then New Hampshire. And it's funny, we think about it like there were just colonies were all hanging out and communicating. In fact, each colony spoke like 90% more with Britain than they did their following neighbor colonies. They looked at colonists like other countries, and that's hard to imagine. And that's how they started developing their own cultures, their own accents. That's why you have such unique accents from Boston and Philly, because it was like hundreds of years of being isolationists essentially from each other. There was no roads, there's no cars. It was, that's kind of how it was. But they're all by ports. And so they all communicated with the king. So the king still had control over all of them just culturally. And everybody was battling to get prominence with the king. It's kind of like it's like a father has 13 kids, and they're each trying to be. They're all worrying about the inheritance. They're all trying to be in his good favor. That's kind of how it was for a long period of time. So it took a lot for these different cultures to sit there to put away their differences and work together. They actually hated each other. They thought arrogant. It's great reading all the old letters, and you hear the people from like Virginia talking about the Neanderthal mentality of people like Massachusetts.
The campaign for president between Thomas Jefferson and Art Hamilton was negative campaigning, man. You watch that, it's like, damn, it was on.
yeah. It was some things just don't change, I guess. But what I'm trying to get to is they were all independent, truly independent. And the noblemen didn't want to deal with America except to make money and make sure that it was a control front to keep the French out. I mean, they just saw it from the they weren't in the trenches dealing with the trees and having to figure out how to do agriculture in this new world and assimilate and create this new culture of things. And with the guns, obviously they all had guns because they needed guns. I mean, the British weren't there to protect them constantly. There were bears coming in their territory, and they might eat the fruit, whatever, that they're importing or exporting to England. So all right, you guys want guns because there's no way you little colonists are going to affect us. You're not going to hit us in any way. So, go ahead, have your little muskets. That's fine. So it built up over time. But the British, they were soft. They were part of an empire. Sound familiar? They were in the city. They were, they were soft. And that was one of the things that ticked off the colonists, especially the founding fathers, because they started to understand something that didn't exist before. It was called a meritocracy. And looked at it as, look how hard we're working. We came to this country or these colonies, and we worked our asses off, and we took this raw land with all of these problems, and look, we got a whole functioning, farm here, and we've got employees, and we're shipping stuff out. We're creating businesses, and I mean, Benjamin Franklin's like the perfect example. He was like the Elon Musk somewhat of his time, a little bit. So with the patents and all the things he did, and so anyway, so there was a lot going on from the colonists of being independent, and they got frustrated watching the noblemen who were soft. They had probably soft hands. They didn't know how to use a pitchfork. They couldn't do any of this, but they were telling them, the colonists, how to live. And of course, the taxes, the tax on tea and the Stamp Act, and there's a lot involved in all that. So they kept hammering Americans, but the issue was that they didn't earn it. most of these noblemen got it from their family. It was wealth, and they were noblemen. Under God supposedly made better everyone else. I mean, that's how it used to be. You know, there were noblemen and there were commoners. And in the old world, that was just etched in stone. And, you know, I know people can't relate to history, but and I'm not defending racism and slavery and such, but it's kind of like this mindset back in the day is that when you didn't see the world, you didn't understand evolution, people really thought that God made people differently in different classes. And, you know, white people dealt with this. It's their own version of cultural or civic slavery, is that people were like white people, believe it or not, white people were, you know, indentured servitudes in many ways in feudal Europe, and that they were considered slaves, and they never thought themselves capable of getting out of it because they were born different. God made them a commoner, and there was no way you could ever get to nobleman class unless you're really hot and nobleman married you or something, and maybe that could happen. But I mean, aside from that, it never changed, and it was just set in stone in your mind. You never even questioned it. And that's a mindset that people today cannot even fathom, that's the prism people saw things. So when it comes to slavery, I mean, that was like the commoners just continuing that mindset. But with slaves, like they just thought, well, you know, we all have a pecking order. Heck, I'm part of the pecking order. I'm a piece of crap when it comes to, you know, the noblemen and the noblemen under the king, and God said so. And maybe the Pope, and not to get into religion, but, you know, it's just that it was set in stone. So when our colonists, the founding fathers, not only did they fight for their independence, the hardest part for people today to realize is they were fighting a complete, like in their mind, like they were getting red pilled for the first time. They were thinking, wait a minute, you know, maybe I am as good as a nobleman. Now, you know, today it's like, well, yeah, of course, you know, it's like you can't. But back then, it was a leap of faith. It was like realizing that the earth is not flat, it's round. You know, it's like realizing, I don't know, the power of chatbot GTP for the first time. You go, whoa, you know. It's like it was even more profound than that. Is you're challenging the natural order of the universe. That's what these founding fathers did. We get caught up in other stuff, but that was the mental change, the cultural change, the spiritual change. It was just profound, and that was happening all here in the colonists. But the British, they weren't going through this philosophical real. As far as they're concerned, you know, the church was there, and and everyone prayed to the churches that were over in Europe, and they're busy fighting for, you know, their position in the world, keeping the Spain at bay and France, and, you know, to credit to England, they were controlling an empire. They had you know, pressures on them and raising tax money in order to protect the colonists. So as far as they're concerned, the colonists should be kissing their ass because, you know, they're using their armadas to keep the rest of the world from invading them. And the colonists are a bunch of like spoiled brat kids that are all sitting there talking about freedom and independence and all this crap. And meanwhile, they're only free because the British were paying for that and defending their so-called freedom. I mean, so it gets complicated. Anyway, I'm sorry. Hopefully this is a little interesting to you guys, and I'm trying to tie it into today as far as culture-wise. But that's the mindset that birthed all of this. So there was this anger towards the noblemen, which ultimately sparked this. And there's always the joke. The British historian, I remember seeing on PBS once years ago. He said, you know, the biggest mistake the Britain made is they should have just made George Washington a nobleman. If they just knighted him, then he would have shut down and said, great, I finally got my little shiny badge, and he would have gone to sleep and like probably put down the revolution. But it's because the British just couldn't understand what the fight was about. So that's an independence that's baked in when you're dealing with mosquitoes. I know we keep going back to that, but it's raw earth. The British, they didn't even want to be here to fight. That's why they had to hire Hessian soldiers, the Germans, soldiers of fortune. I mean, they had to hire an army because they couldn't get enough British to go and want to be here. They hated it. Yeah, the Hessian, right? Hessian soldiers. Matter of fact, they're the ones that got massacred on Christmas Eve on the crossing of the Delaware, which was really just guerrilla warfare, slaughtering. They waited till Christmas Eve because Washington was about to lose all of his troops on New Year's Eve all of the troops were going to be not all, but most of them their contract was up, and they had no wins. And Washington knew that, they're freezing at Valley Forge, which is a great place to go visit if you guys are ever in Pennsylvania. And it was the entire army. I mean, the biggest lob from like one end zone to the other end zone of a football. It's like the Hail Mary pass. And he's like, well, I'm going to lose them in a week. And so what else do I have? My guys are falling apart, disease, and they're freezing and all of this. Just go to Valley Forge during the winter, guys, and check out what that place is like. You can still hang out in the log cabins and see what they were living like. But they wound up, George Washington did the ultimate Hail Mary. And so he goes, well, I'll wait till Christmas Eve, right? That's the day when everyone usually, through respect, nobody fought on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, because everyone, at least for Christians or Catholics or whatever, everyone still believes in Jesus. So that's the one day of rest. Well, Washington violated that. He's like, all right, I'm going to wait till you guys, because I know what we do on Christmas, because we all share that culture, and we're all going to drink and party, have plenty of eggnog. And then, they're all going to be sleeping and be half drunk, and that's when we attack, when they're buzzed in their beds. And then they went over. And, of course, most of those people were all Hessian soldiers. They were all Germans that they killed. They weren't. I mean, a few were British, like the colonels or whatever, but most of them were all German. So anyway, what I'm trying to get to is that's the mindset of such raw independence that it's pretty rare in I would say it's raw in human history. It's existed before. It's just that usually people were slaves of the system and still had to live on their own. But to live on your own completely, have to do what Ernie Hancock is doing right now. Well, I have to get a book. Well, I got to sit there and sell or do this or this, and I got to buy this and this. Oh, I have to get in a pipe. Oh, you know what, man, I got a 3D printer. I'll have to learn about 3D printing. I can make a part and do this. But I mean, that's the essence of what our founding fathers dealt with. Hence, that's why his name's Hancock. But that's the mindset that everyone had here, and the British couldn't even fathom that because they were all cushy. All right, I already made that point a few times. Well, now, over 200-something years later, what's happened? Trust me, Ernie, I won't go to the 250 years of history. I'll spare you. But like 100 years later is when the Industrial Revolution happens. This country was probably the most flourishing ever at that time. I mean, even more than the tech boom. You look at history with Rockefeller and the train barons, railroad barons, and right after the Civil War was probably the greatest time for America as far as economics, technology. I mean, the light bulb, suddenly you can see. I mean, it's just incredible the changes that they went through. We think we're going through changes with AI. They went through monumental changes. But the change that really changed America, as a result of those technological changes, just like AI is going to change America or the world permanently. But here in America, it was the cities, because now they had lights. Now in order to have lights, you had to have a generator. Well, the generator, you need wires to get the electricity. Well, if you're living where Ernie does, most people couldn't afford a wire from wherever the plant was all the way out to Ernie's place. So you had to go where the plant was to get the wires. So you can have light. And then with light, then you can have, eventually refrigeration and this and that and that. All these things started to happen. So people found benefits to move into cities. And once you go into cities, which is inevitable, for a bunch of reasons, especially when you have immigration and with immigration, people come in from, I'm not trying to load this thing, different cultures. And so when you come from Italy, you go around with other Italians, to help you out, help you assimilate in. And so you get communities that build. And I don't mean that in a bad sense here. I just mean there's reasons why people consolidate into local areas and groups. And when you have groups, what's opposite to groups? Individuals, right? It's always the tension between the individual and groups. And with libertarians, we have built in us, it's almost like genetic, especially Ernie, and many of us, it's built into our DNA of being independent. And I do believe it's kind of a genetic structure for definitely we diehard libertarian types. But not everyone shares that. Most primates, they're okay with groups. There's a balance between alone time and group time, social creatures. But especially the benefits of technology. And then when you're in a city, now you can make more money because, obviously with finance and all sorts of things, you can start making businesses. Anyway, the point is society starts to get more and more intertwined. And hence, the more intertwined you are, the harder it is to decouple from it. And you start to ultimately, without going through every little piece of technology, you start to become softer, just like what happened to the British, because they had their nice cities in England and Paris and all of this, and over in Europe. Well, we started creating our own, like New York City as an example. So you start to have all of these, you get softer and you start losing. And of course, each person can't do everything, and you can. Ernie's doing everything. I mean, that's what's astounding to watch Ernie and many of us that are making our off grid, like Peter Bigfoot and so many of us out there. You have to learn so many different techniques and abilities to pull off living on your own. I mean, it's like a challenge of life, and that's what's so admirable about it. But on the flip side, there's other things you can't do as efficient, right? So if you have someone else fish your fish and someone else makes your electricity and someone else does it, then you can focus on one thing that you do really well, and that's the benefit of societies. And as group power, you get each person doing one thing better and better, and then you aggregate all these things together, and that's why an aggregate culture system will trample the individual. I know it's probably setting off Ernie in a second, but I'm talking just the way it is. I mean, you got a whole unified army that's been put together from all different factions. Everyone's doing their own thing. They will crush the individual who's doing everything on his farm, who's got one gun. So it's just logical. But that's kind of what our society wound up becoming, and it's gotten worse every year with every technological. And then you add in, I don't even have to explain it to you guys at this point, where it's my narrative, is telecommunications and telephones and televisions and, of course, radio, and then the internet, and now AI, and now we got blockchain technologies trying to unify the entire world's financial system. So each person gets more and more mired into this world, like you're a cog in the machine, and you start feeling like you're in the machine, which some people do, some people don't, some people love it. But it's so a different world than so it's not just so what I'm trying to get to, and there's the long-winded way of Ernie's going to say, Phranq, you still are wrong, and freedom's the answer, and zip it, and I get it. But I appreciate the time, actually, Ernie, just to kind of flesh out when I'm talking about culture or freedom. It's not that I'm against the idea of freedom, and I definitely want to go back to that. I just sincerely don't know how, from my perspective, of how we got it in the first place. Because unless everyone just leaves the cities and everyone goes out to the land and does their own thing, I mean, which I think that'd be great spiritually. I think that would be fantastic as human beings. And yes, I think occupy the land, which is really what I just said. It's what you talk about all the time. It's occupy the land is not just the land, so you just stick it to the government. Occupying the land, it encompasses everything that goes along with it. You can't occupy. I mean, you can occupy the land, occupy Wall Street, and just show up in the desert and lie down and tie yourself to a cactus for a little while. I mean, you can occupy the land that way. But no, occupy the land really means learning everything about what it means to be a human being.
It's a mindset, just like having a Second Amendment right. And having guns and ammunition and whatever, it's a mindset. It's a security thing. It's like your wife feels better when and you're working at night and you got a German Shepherd at home. I mean, just a mindset. Your security is based on your circumstances. One of the things that we emphasized is the preparation. It's a book by Doug Casey and Matt Smith that the example is Matt Smith's son, Maxim, is, I think, 20 years old now. And he's going through the preparation, which is 16 3-month cycles of different things that gives you a 4-year education if I actually know how to do something. And he's already done his EMT training for being a emergency medical technician, whatever, and he's worked on wildfires, as an EMT. He's learned to sail around the Straits of Magellan. He's learned. He's going to Thailand now to learn Muay Thai self-defense. He's and one of the things that they had in the cycle, and he's getting his private pilot's license on. He and his father Matt were just on Glenn Beck. And we have that on the front page of Freedom's Phoenix now, too. And I had communicated with Matt Smith yesterday because we have, ads on Freedom's Phoenix for this book. And I've interviewed Doug Casey and Maxim on this thing. And I go, look, man, this is the crap right here. This is going to take off way more than you think. And it's starting to. So Matt sent me a telegram. Whoa, damn, man, you pegged this one. Here we go. And on Glenn Beck, they were talking about one of the modules is in Florida, where you go and you learn to run heavy equipment. So he's doing that one. Then he's going up to, I think it's New Hampshire, where they have a build your own home in 3 weeks thing or something. And it's about building homes. Now, of course, I'm sure they, get a home and get paid to do it and got a bunch of, rich people's kids out there doing it, or poor or whatever, I don't know, but it's not free. So you go out there and you learn how to build a nice nest so a little birdie might want to live with you and raise a family. So Maxim gets done with this, and he's chronicling it on a Substack and has videos and YouTube and so on. Well, he only has, it's significant, like 15,000 subscribers, something like that. But a lot of people, hey, man, you need to come down here and do this thing. You need to do this thing. You need to do this thing. So all that's in there. And in the book, they supply different places to get this man-building, Renaissance man kind of thing, to where you come out of these 4 years and they go, well, how much does this cost? Less than a 4-year university education, I can tell you that. But in the process, you make money. When Maxim did, at 19, 20 years old, he's working wildfires as an EMT, making $600 a day. So you go, man, that could be a career right there. So as he's learning all this stuff, he's going to be 22 and come out what? Way to freak ahead of everybody else. So this is starting to become a thing. It's not just that you pick one of these or that you do it or even occupy the land. You have all the knowledge and the capability to, and competence creates confidence, which eliminates fear.
Okay, Ernie, I want you to comment on one other thing. You tell me personally, if you don't mind sharing with the audience, but also I'm sure we've seen a lot of other off-gridders, is that you can take the most atheist, agnostic, libertarian, or whoever they are, and they start going off-grid. And isn't it interesting how religious they become and more spiritual, and how many of them suddenly find Christianity, the audience knows I come from a different background, but still, it's the foundation religion of our country, and you tend to be, and when you're out in the fields for different reasons, you tend to get
I'll tell you why. My experience.
What have you found? Oh, yeah, I'm
being out here a year and a half and talking to people and traveling the country and going to these different communities and so on, is I think the relationship with a deity, with God, accepting Christ, or whatever, they are all closer to God because they are closer to God. When you're out in nature and you're outside and you're doing it, you feel the insignificance of how small you really are, and you're vulnerable to the weather. You got the polar vortex coming down. Well, guess what? You ain't in charge anymore. The cold is, or the heat, or the dust, or the lack of water, or too much water, or what, and where do you see this power? Well, it's, it's the earth and, math and physics and, whatever. But there is a much closer tie-in to God's creation, and you feel it. And you envelop yourself in it. You surrender to it. This is one thing as, having become, okay, I give you my path. I grew up, going to church with my grandmother all the time. My dad was, her son. He had enough. His father was killed in an industrial accident when he was like 10, and, he kind of, just wasn't him. My mother, her whole family was Mormon. They were part of the Mormon invasion of Mesa, here. And so they had that. So I got indoctrinated with all the, what that meant and everything. But I was left to my own. But when I graduated high school and started moving around the country, doing different stuff, going to school and stuff, I sat down. I said, I didn't have a TV, and I just go, I'm going to read. Well, I read a lot of science fiction. I read a lot of historical fiction, like Clavel and, Michener and, a lot of stuff to learn geography and culture and stuff around the world. And that kind of opened my eyes to stuff. I haven't traveled that much, but I've been to other countries. But the main thing was I read the Bible straight through a couple times, because when I did King James and what the hell they just say, and then I did the Good News version, whatever. So the narrative in there, if you get past all the inconsistencies that Grok said wasn't that much, all of a sudden Grok turned Christian. But the main thing is you could see that it was history, that it was the way men are, women, mankind, humankind, whatever. And you could see that these stories repeat themselves. It was really going on the character of power, the character of collective versus individual, the character of your relationship, with what? Your government, a ruler, a king, the other kingdom, the kingdom of God. All this, as you go through that, you start to see that there is a point to where you have to take a leap of faith. There is, okay, I did all the logic and reason, research and history such as I could, back then in the, early 80s. And read a lot of books and so on. So I'm just like, okay, I get it. I was looking at it, not as a critic, but, I convinced me. Once I accepted Christ, once I got to that point, okay, I get it. I'm going to take on what would Jesus do. I'm going to go down this path. The second I did that, you had this overwhelming feeling of you chose wisely. And I remember the scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark, the one where Sean Connery was in and they went and found the chalice. I can't remember which name of that was. But they go and they find, this goblet and whatever you had to pick from them. And if you chose badly, you melted in front of them. And Indiana Jones, this is a carpenter's cup. It wasn't ornate or anything. He does that and he drinks the water of life. And they go, you chose wisely. That was the feeling that I got. And for somebody to go that you didn't expect, it was all in your imagination, God's in your head, it was, it's not real, yada, 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 yada. I'm going, that was real to me. And that's all it has to be. It's a personal, individual thing. It was after that I started studying more about how governments related to that. Why you have all these different dominant religions in different cultures and countries and so on, and why the collectivist, socialist, communist, you try to expunge your religion. If they can't use it to get what they want, well, then they, poo-poo it. But that wasn't the way it was in Europe. I mean, it's the Pope. And if the King of England couldn't get what he wanted from the Pope, screw you, I got my own church, Church of England. We'll do it different. I'll crown myself. Fight me. So you can see all the manipulations, but it didn't change the stories or the tone of certainly the New Testament. And it is New Testament. And it's totally different than the Old Testament. But if you read the Old Testament, you'll see the foundation for the revolution. Jesus was a revolutionary, is a revolutionary. So this whole concept is so ingrained in our culture here in America that it gets down to the individual. God doesn't see you as a group. Well, Israel wants you to think that way. We're the chosen people. I got Jewish blood, therefore I'm good. Regardless of what I do, believe, how I treat people, or that's not how it works. So this individualism thing is a creation of philosophy over the eons or whatever, but it directly rhymes with the New Testament. And you got to go, why? Is that the truth? Is it, what worked? Is it the most popular? Well, Christianity, man, it flooded the planet. Then you got, Muslim, and that's more a collectivist thing. You got the Jewish, definitely seems to be more collectivist thing, and whatever else. Now, some of the other Eastern religions and stuff, they're, maybe more like Confucius or Buddha. They're a little bit down more karma and individual and your actions and responsible and all that kind of stuff. So you could see throughout human history, and as you read a lot
you're
of
right. I just want to comment. I was just going to say, I come from a Buddhist background as the audience. Yeah, thank you for saying that. They tend to be more individual. They're not as collective as many Western faiths for whatever there's reasons, but yeah, fair point. Keep going.
It's not just your village sitting around humming and trying to levitate themselves or whatever. It's you. It's an individual. Now, this was twisted a little bit with the, I think it was called the Natural Law Party. And it was 92 during the Perot, Greitz, Bush and Clinton presidential election cycle. And they got ballot status in all 50 states. And there was a movie called What the Bleep Do We Know? And it was all about birds of a feather flock together, general public opinion, that kind of thing. And there were transcendental meditation people out of, I think it was Jackson County, Iowa. And I remember it was one of the towns that Ron Paul had spoke at. I was there. And I called Aaron, what the hell was his name? The guy that did America, Freedom to Fascism.
Aaron Russo.
Yeah, Aaron Russo. So Aaron and I were friends at times, so on, did a lot of stuff. And I called him and I said, hey, I'm here with a transcendental meditation crowd at the Center Park gazebo thing with Ron Paul speaking and everything, and I got the transcendental meditationists screaming, "End the Fed." I go, you win, man. Before you die, I just want you to know, you win when you got the transcendental meditation people going end the Fed. I just say it, okay? So you like that. But this is what they were trying to do, and they did this experiment during the campaign. They go, if we have a bunch of our people, they had, I don't know, hundreds of people, whatever, went to Washington, D.C., and just meditated for peace. No crime. And then, of course, the stats went down. That was the point that they were trying to make. Just positive waves. That's why I always say positive waves, which oftentimes is prayer. When you have a lot of people in prayer for the country and prayer for whatever, it has an impact. Is it a force? Is it, God's will? Is it, you're not going to get it unless you ask for it? When you finally come back to me, when you are freaking, things are dire, and, you turn to God, then maybe God help you out a little bit, maybe. Just say it. So this is kind of my mindset. And I'm going, what was it that was so popular? Freedom. That you answer to a higher authority, and authority doesn't want a higher authority you're answering to. Just saying. So they go after raw milk and meat for Amish or something. This is, so what you're saying is when people find themselves in more need of God's grace for rain, for not rain, for, productivity of crops or whatever, what do they turn to? Well, Aztecs go and sacrifice the village next door and rip their heart out and them falling down the pyramid or something. But I'm just, what was the logical conclusion as time went on? It was that we're like, look, man, we got to be at peace with ourselves, God, each other. 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not murder. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness, lie. Thou shalt not envy your neighbor's stuff. There shalt not. Then you get the Bill of Rights, the shalt nots of government, and support that golden rule and 10 Commandments thing down to the people and give them the authority, because they say they're responsible for paying for it, but they don't have the authority to not have to pay for it. So it's all fundamental evolution, enlightenment of the human experience. And Christianity is one of the better examples. It can also be a bad example, how it gets used. You got these Christian Zionist thing of, pressing at the seminaries with the Schofield Bible that's all about Israel, and you get to be a Christian Zionist, and then you get a church and some money. you can just follow the money. So when you move out on the land, or you're in a rural communities. We did the Love Bus Liberty tours. We traveled around the country. It was intentional that we went into more rural communities. Now, we went to cities and stuff too, but it wasn't near the same. And the more rural you got, the more spiritual they were, the more church-going they were, but even the people that didn't were still part of the community, and by osmosis and just getting along, took on these principles and the mindset of their Christian neighbors. You know, they knew what was and was not acceptable behavior. So when you got the one, you know, rape and murder, serial, whatever, I mean, you know, the community comes together and goes take care of business, which is why they got to keep moving. So this is so obvious to me that this is a spiritual battle. It is a war between good and evil, but you have to define those terms. It's like saying, you know, make America great again. What the hell does that mean? What's evil? What's good? And when I say government, bad, 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 it's bad people doing bad stuff that they know is bad. That's the definition of evil. We see it everywhere all the time. So when I'm talking about occupy the land, what does that really mean? I don't really care what you do or don't do. That's not the point. The point is that you have the capability, as certainly a young man and a young woman looking for a young man that's going to be able to make a nice nest and raise children, that when you look at the capability of doing that, you have to have an understanding of right and wrong. You are not going to be successful or be on this earth long if you are violating your neighbor's rights all the time. You're stealing their tractor. You're destroying their crops. You're trying to force them to pay more taxes so you can eat and not have to be productive. This happened with the Mayflower. The Mayflower Compact, when they came over, they go, oh, it's all the collective, and we'll, you know, from each according to their ability to each according to their need, and they almost winked out until they finally started recognizing property rights, and then they flourished. So this is what's so fundamental to me and why I keep saying the culture of freedom, which is what evolved here in America. Those people, those productive, give me a chance, I'll come, homestead land, the Oklahoma Sooners, you know, doing the homesteading, going out, just leave me alone and we will build a community, a society, a culture of freedom. Well, before the ink was dry on the Constitution, they, them, those are here trying to get it. Well, Tocqueville comes to America and he's going, America's great because Americans are good. When they cease to be good, they'll cease to be great. That's what's happening. But you got to define good and bad. How do you do that? Well, you know, it's nice to be a good neighbor. You know, be neighborly. Rule one, don't be a dick. But the biggest thing is you're not an active thief. You're not getting in the way of someone else's pursuit of happiness. You're not taking their stuff, taking their life, taking their liberty, taking their property. These are very fundamental, simple things. But when you have a government that's all they do, and certainly taking your wealth with inflation, you know, printing more dollars, when they say, here's a license and permit for every freaking thing on the planet, and oh my God, Ohio farmers are getting too organized, you need a permit. You know, this cannot sustain itself. So people go back to basics. They'll go back to a relationship with God. They go back to a relationship with their neighbors. They go back to a relationship with nature. They go to the soil. And that's why you're learning a bunch about nutrition and a bunch about building and a bunch about soil production and a bunch about health and a bunch about this is what's coming. Who are the ones that are going to be roadkill on the way to enlightenment? The ones that aren't, you know, pursuing the definition of good or even know what the hell the difference is. This is the culture I'm talking about, because America was unique in that it made an intention after a couple of hundred years here under British rule that they finally go, you know, we're good. Declaration of Independence to a candid world. We are telling you why we are doing this. We got to be very clear why we are separating and challenging the most powerful entity on the planet, save God, that divine providence, God's help, we will prevail. And eventually they did. But the point is, To do what? Well, here's the pinky swear promise of what we're going to do. They violate that, and what does the Declaration say? If it doesn't support individual rights, it's time to alter or abolish. It's your right, your duty. Well, then what do they want to do? We're going to replace it with socialism, command economy, and all. Man, that's definitely going down the wrong direction. And what do they counter it with? No, we're in charge. Make America great again according to Trump. What the hell is that? Just leave me alone. Freedom. No, it's not on the agenda. It's not even a goal. It's not talked about. It's just all we can do is complain when they're not supporting individual rights, property rights, liberties. And then we were certainly warned from Washington to Eisenhower that this military thing, a lot of people don't know, in the Constitution, you can only fund the military for 2 years. It has to all right, we funded it for 2 years and go do your thing and we'll check on it for another 2 years. Well, now it's just perpetual freaking military-industrial complex stuff. So I don't see a solution until it's always, the barefoot robed guy coming out and changing general public opinion. You're Gandhi, you're Christ, you're somebody, comes out and says, this is the way it should be. And then the people go into the streets, which is happening right now all over the world, and you're not hearing about it. There is national strikes going on in Italy. Germany's up in an uproar. The whole continent of Europe is going down the tubes economically. Ireland's in the street. London's in the street. On what? But you have American media and so on, if you're not alternative media, and then it's suppressed and shadow banned and whatever. There is a worldwide resistance to this control. They have abandoned the 15-minute thing in London because everybody destroyed the cameras that they were finding.
Wait. What 15-minute thing? What are you talking about?
15-minute cities. You're only allowed to go like 15 minutes
gotcha.
from. Well, they were implementing that in London, and you would get a ticket in the mail because your car was outside the limit of whatever the hell, and they're like, "Kiss my ass," and they just started destroying them for months. Now they're gone. So they go, oh, well, we're good guys now. We're not going to do that anymore. Of course they're going to do it. They're just not going to have. It's just like the freeway cameras that we got eliminated here on the highways in the Phoenix area, here in Arizona. Because it wasn't just taking pictures of speeders. It was continuous video. They were tracking you by facial recognition and by your license plate and registration. They were tracking, and we knew this after somebody had shot a speed camera van, that they had a van on this, and then they tracked him and followed him and found him. It was supposed to be cameras. Well, it was videotape, and they found the guy that shot into the van. Well, there happened to have been a guy in it, and he killed him. Oh, we're definitely letting you know that we got video now. Well, they were denying it all up till then. So this is just so. And eventually, after the camera fraud expose and us in the workshop we had, they stopped it. But the reason they stopped it was not because of that. Is because we had a information campaign that let people know that you had to be served. Either the officer gave you a ticket, or you had to accept the subpoena or service in the mail. Or they had to physically come and give it to you. They were just sending it out in the mail. And we told people, just ignore it, because they can't do anything until you're served. And then people would register. Husband and my daughter and son-in-law did this. The car that he drives was registered to his wife, and the car that she drove was registered to him. So whenever they get you a speeding ticket and you got to go down to court, and they go, well, this isn't you. Who is this? Do you know who this is? Yeah. Well, who is it? I'll have to tell you. Case dismissed. After we did that, so it was called Red Flex. That was a company out of Australia. And after we were successful at doing this, we had activists in Chicago that called us and said, how'd you guys do this? What'd you? I said, it was a money thing. We let people know. Now, of course, they go and they change laws, whatever, they're always doing something. But it was a money thing. They went bankrupt. They were losing money. And the whole thing was the municipalities, they wanted to generate this. And even to the detriment of the safety of drivers, they shortened the yellow light They had it optimized to where, so people didn't run red lights and get run over and killed. They shortened it seconds so that they could get more red light runners to make money and kill people. Once that came out, then it got even worse. Well, sooner or later, red light just rolled up and said, we're out of Arizona. Took the cameras down. Pinky swear. You think they don't have cameras? Of course they got cameras all over the place. So it's whatever they're doing, they just want to make legal. So it just demonstrates the power of activism, the power of information, the power of the people. So that's what's happening worldwide right now. And if you're not on Freedom's Phoenix, you don't know anything about it. And things are changing. We got a story with Fetterman, the short-wearing hoodie guy from Pennsylvania is, trying to separate himself from the Democratic Socialists in his party. Fetterman? Seriously? Going after AOC, I'm like, oh my God, we are in craziness. But who's representing us? Trump? Not really. Who's he representing, Phranq?
Yeah, well, certainly not me, and certainly not most of America first. So, but before we go off, I just want to put a bow on top of this conversation. It's a nice, open, broad conversation besides the arguing over culture. But I guess I want to pose it into a question for you in a couple minutes, so just wait for it. Wait for it, as Mark Dice likes to say. Like I said, in order to have the freedom and the independence that birthed this country, I'm not to rehash the whole thing, but it was like 200 plus years of people thinking that they were controlled and they didn't know it. Like I said, they were commoners, they lived under the king, and they were happy with it. They were happy. It took 200 plus years to get to the Boston Tea Party. Or over 200 years. So it wasn't like Americans or colonists were already like Ernie Hancock types, and it was in the drinking water. You have to realize it was hundreds of years to get to that point. Then the flashpoint occurred in Lexington and Concord, and then 200 plus years since then, and we've gone kind of back into, being controlled without knowing that we're controlled. Now, I mean, this audience gets it. Most people never thought they were being controlled, although, like Ernie just talked about, it's starting to become where grandma knows about it, and you're having the protests all over Europe. I mean, countries that have been controlled for generations and longer than this country's been here. And you have to sit back and you think, well, why? Like as an example, if you see a company like NVIDIA comes out, right, and they got a new AI chip, all of a sudden, like, wow, that's the future. And you can make a lot of money, and you can control, and you have power. So, you would think that, of course, you'd have competitors. People want to adopt it. But you look at America. I mean, look at how amazing America has been. God, I hate this talk in the past here, but we got our flag on the moon. We'll just go with the major talking point there. But look at what we've done as far as going from like nothing to as powerful as we have been. The pop culture influence on the world, all the inventions, the technology. I mean, I know there was a lot of benefits we've had. We have natural resources. We were isolated from all of Europe for a while. We didn't have all the battles. I mean, I get all that. Trust me, but at the same time, at the core of it is the Bill of Rights. It's, without getting Ernie angry about it, it's also the Constitution. He and I disagree on this, but I still stand by the Constitution is the most brilliant document of how to, a civil way of ruling amongst a group of people for the most balanced checks and balances. And I know, yeah, no, I agreed. Yeah, when you really study it, I'm just saying, to me, when you're studying almost like if you make like a flow chart and you see how everything goes, or how the House, Peter Schiff was just talking about just the other day, how, the House is the only part of Congress that's allowed to increase taxes because they were the closest to the people. They're only 2 years, right? And they're the closest. And that's why only they can do the taxes, which, by the way, is why this tariff thing is being thrown out by the Supreme Court, because the president thinks he can turn around and throw tariffs, but who's paying the tariffs? Heck, even South Park did an episode on that remember from City Walk? City Walk, the guy, and I don't know if you saw the episode when Butters was getting hit with the tariffs. He wanted to buy some gift for some girl in school, And every time he went back to buy another gift to impress the girl, it kept going up like $10, and he was running out of money to buy the gifts. He's like, why?
He had to get the right one, but buy a bunch of them to get the right one. And
he had to get the right one. But the joke was that it kept going up in price. He goes, how come I just saved up money and you raised the price? He goes, not my fault. Tariffs. I'm not paying tariff. You pay tariff. So so basically, and we all know that's how it works. But so Trump, by putting tariffs, is actually charging us a tax. It's almost like the secret inflation tax, right? It's taxes in a different way. So that's the interesting argument I understand is with the Supreme Court is, if we're the ones paying the tariffs, then that's really a tax levied by the executive branch, but only the House can do that. So, but anyway, so it's just there's such a beauty in the symmetry and the flow of the Constitution, and we'll save that for our annual 4th of July episode where Ernie and I usually fight about the Constitution. But the point though is that let's just roll with it for me for a minute, Ernie. But the Constitution and Bill of Rights as a combo, it's like frickin' Phranq, Arm and Hammer, Kibbles and Bits. The Bill of Rights and the Constitution to me, they go together. So why wouldn't I know you're biting your tongue. Good job, Ernie. But why wouldn't those two that bequeathed the nation and the culture we have today that's been, I would say fairly successful despite our problems, why wouldn't other countries, especially European countries or other nations, look at the damn flag on the moon and go, you know what? They've got a good working model, like NVIDIA or Henry Ford with the assembly line. It's like, oh, they've got a nice model there. We should emulate it. We should copy it. And no one did, right? Now, you could very quickly make the point, well, yeah, because they all had leaders and they don't want to give up power. And yeah, I get that. But, through hundreds of years, there have been revolutions. There have been, look at what Castro did. All kinds of revolutions, of populist nationalist revolutions. And how come none of them wound up doing what we've done? Or at least tried to, it seems. People have tried or attempted. Ernie Hancock. I'm not trying to keep blowing smoke here to fluff up here my buddy Ernie, but, he was, I know you guys were dropping constitutions or Bill of Rights in, what was it, Arabic? You want to tell that story real quick? We were dropping them over in Arabian nations, weren't you? For the people to pick up?
I had an interview recently. This came up. It was a gentleman that was one of the creators, the co-founders of the crypto Xano that we're working with. And I wanted to talk to the lead developers. I needed to, I talked to the marketing guy and one of the other guys that's kind of the project manager, and I want to talk to the developer. And the reason I wanted to talk to them is I wanted to make sure that they understood as they create this crypto community, communication, private agorist, leave me alone this market of whatever, that we have the mesh network here, that we can be off the grid and we can connect it to Starlink to go to other community. We're setting up planning for the future. I'm really serious about what I think is coming. Like right now I have a couple of bikes that are coming. It's been like a week and a half late. And, well, it was the holidays and FedEx is kind of, we're pinky swear sorry, and it's on the way. And kind of, well, usually we get stuff like the next day or 2 days later, and Donna's going off the post office now. But this one thing, whenever you have real problems in the COVID days, you'd have shipping delays, you couldn't get, and it was like a small world and you could get whatever you wanted and then you couldn't. Well, these are coming, these days, and this is just a reminder of that. Well, this marketing stuff for Xano, as they develop this community, it'll be between communities and people, and it's like the Ohio farmer guys getting attacked. Well, it's private and they don't know, and they don't even have to use money. Traditional fiat, they do Xano, we're good. So that's why I wanted them to understand that this is what we're shooting for in the development that we need for us to endorse and support this technology that they're working on, that I wanted to talk to the developers. And I go, this is the goal. This is what we need. This is what we see coming. This is why. So that's why we had Pirates Without Borders, Letters of Captain Mark, and so on, to explain the decentralization philosophy down to the individual. Now, these tech guys, they don't know. He's from Russia. Well, I wanted to know why. When I get new guys, introduce them to the audience, I want to know why. Why do you care? Why do you do this? What motivates you? Why? Well, finally, I mean, it took a while because nobody ever asked him. And it's, well, I was in Russia and this happened, that happened, and I knew we needed this, and I developed that. And he was the one that created some of the core coding that eventually became Monero. So the privacy coin that Monero is goes over to the Xano and starting to flush it out a little bit more. So I'm going, and this is supported by like Aaron Day and Roger Ver and all these. That's how I knew about it, and we started, getting in. I go, okay, if I'm going to support you like we did with Bitcoin in the early days and pimping that out to whatever, but I didn't get all in on it. I would spend it, to kind of increase the economy and make people knew it worked, and now nobody's using it as currency anymore. So that's going to be another crypto that'll take that on, and hopefully not the U.S. dollar, digital currency. So when I was talking to him about this, he's like, "Oh, this libertarian thing," because he was a head-down plow coder. It was Pavel, the other guy that I talked to, that was more the system, the community, the reason for it, the stack of things that need to be done. He's just a guy that does it. Well, I've seen these guys before. They're all at these Bitcoin conferences in the corner, a group of, a dozen of them with their gazillion-dollar laptop cross-legged on the floor, and then venture capitalists come in and Shanghai them to go code for whatever the hell jail and prison thing that they're creating to, fleece the people kind of deal, like in the South Park thing on cryptocurrency. Yeah, we're gonna create this cryptocurrency. We're gonna do this. We're gonna pump and dump, and then we're done. We're gonna get big gazillionaires like the Trump sons. I mean, they really hammered on Trump. So when I was talking to him about this, he goes, "Yeah, I didn't really understand. You made it a lot clearer, for this libertarian flag. I don't know really that much about it," which surprised me, because he's just a coder, which is why we would make these books, the Letters of Captain Mark on Pirates Without Borders book. You can get on Amazon. You go pirateswithoutborders.com, and you'll see the letters, and they're in a book. You can order on Amazon. But we get a bunch of those, and we hand them out to these guys. The next day, they're like, "Wow, man, that was awesome. I understand now." So I go to this guy, and I said, "Look, he wanted to know," and I said, "I got something for you. It's called the Philosophy of Liberty." Philosophy of Liberty is an animation that's only about 8 minutes long or something, and it's done in like 100 and something languages, and it's just real basic. The philosophy of liberty is self-ownership. And then it goes from the graphics and examples, and it's got like the song in the background. I think it's from The Exorcist or something, the bells thing, whatever. But so it has the music in the background, and it shows these graphics. And all you got to do is change the fonts. And it goes, it's in Apache, So I'm going, okay, but they didn't have it in Arabic. So we were able to contract with a libertarian in Moscow. The International Society for Individual Liberty, Ken Schoolin is an economist, universities in Hawaii. That was the source of this material. That another guy that helped edit our radio show back in 2003 that took that and he made this animation. And it gets gazillions, and it's loaded up gazillion times. And they kept taking it down on YouTube there for a while, but now it's so ubiquitous they can't do it anymore. Well, we had it translated into Arabic. This was when Tahrir Square was going on, the Arab Spring and all that stuff was happening. And in Egypt, in Cairo, they had the people rising up. Well, of course, the Muslim Brotherhood and everybody else and their grandma jumped in front of that parade and vote for us kind of thing. But where it really started was just some young girl said, "Why aren't you guys in the street protecting us from this crap? We don't need Pharaoh number 300. What's going on?" So people went into the streets. Well, they were protesting. It was like Tiananmen Square in China. It's like what's going on in London now, or Ireland, or Germany, and Italy. This is at Argentina. This stuff happens all the time, but it gets shanghaied into whatever they say it is, and the media pumps it, and this is what it's all about. It's like the Tea Party after the Ron Paul revolution. Yep, we're over here in the Tea Party. We're going and it was Republican. So I'm going, okay. So I go, they need to understand the philosophy of liberty, that they don't need Pharaoh number 300. You need to be free. So we had them translate it. we made like thousands, 4,000 or 5,000 DVDs of it, but we had to do it in, I think it was called PAL format. It's a different format that they have regional DVD players, like the one in the U.S. doesn't necessarily work in Cairo. So we had to make sure we got that right. So we get that. We had it done. We put it on the DVD. We sent a book that Cato supplied us, hundreds of these little books, and it had the Declaration of Independence, Constitution, and Bill of Rights on the left side, and on the right side, it was the Islamic translation of it. So you turn it and you could directly compare it. Well, we did little mailing stickers on the Constitution page, and we said, this hasn't worked that great for us, but maybe you can do better. But kept the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights, unmolested, said, this is really the basis here, along with that video. We had to ship it to Alexandria, which cost hundreds of dollars. It was ridiculous how much it FedEx that thing. So we sent that there and had activists that slung them around to Rear Square. Any activist there, they just gave them, the books and these DVDs. Boom, 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 boom. Then Ken Schoolin from ISIL goes, which they changed their name because it became a terrorist group or some crap, but anyway, International Society for Individual Liberty. And he goes, what the shit did you do? Holy crap, because we put links also to that translation on their webpage. And they go, oh my God, the biggest download was Morocco and Jordan.
Wow.
And they went, what the crap? Well, they were released in the Arab community, and it just kind of exploded. Now, of course, Saudi Arabia gets impacted, all over Europe. That's when we got attacked after we were doing that and the freedom thing. For some reason, this is Arab Spring thing, the Mossad, because Michael Kilsky was state chair of the Libertarian Party here in Arizona at the time. He was also one of my webmasters, and he's got a master's in computer science, and he's the one that set up our early interface before all the social media stuff happened back in 2003. So he's an attorney also. Well, what happened is he knew, because he's a computer geek, he could track it down to who was doing this, 26,000 hits a second or minute or some crap, a denial of service attack that we got because of this activism. He tracked it back to Germany, and it was an Israeli thing. And he sent him a letter on his legal letterhead saying, look, we know what you're doing here. Cease and desist, or here we come. Well, then I get an email from them. Oh, we were just testing and demonstrating your vulnerability of, blah, blah, blah in our service or whatever. No worries, signed Ivan. And I'm like, who are these people, man? So we did a bunch of shows on it, did some research and everything. But it demonstrated to me that there is an international fear of the philosophy of liberty. So I did this to the young man, I can't remember his name, Andre, the Russian, doing the Xano thing that created some of the base code that went into Monero. And all this time, with all this privacy, all of this freedom, all of this crypto stuff, had no clue what libertarian was. He didn't understand philosophy. I go, it's all about self-ownership. Watch this 8-10 minute thing, and you'll understand what language you want. There's Russian. I go ahead, you just look for Russia. Here it is. So that's the power of the ideas. That's the power of general public opinion. That's the power. It's why they shut down Twitter and Facebook in Iran. It's why they censor all this stuff. That's why they, cancel and deplatform and going, because they don't want ideas mucking up their narrative they're trying to do. What is Trump going to do when you have this start to dominate and you get the Charlie Kirk mentality versus Ben Shapiro? I mean,
right. The reason I was bringing that up is just to, again, I promise I'll finish up this point. It's kind of it's a loaded thing. Hopefully we'll see if your blood pressure holds true. But this whole thing about the background with culture and why American culture was so powerful, how it came up. It's like a moment in time. It doesn't mean it's can't come back. It doesn't mean it's not righteous. It doesn't mean it's what I personally prefer or you. And none of that, all that's moot to me. I'm looking at it just like a social scientist going, okay, it's like you have an idea, and ideas often have their time. There's many ideas that are ahead of their time or behind their time, or you're sitting around waiting for the idea to take hold. Like, oh, I know, we should have sound money. How long's that idea been around for a while? And people just, it's like they watch the debt clock keep going up, tick, 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 in Times Square, and it still doesn't sit in on them, right? Sometimes it takes a bludgeon to the head, or real desperate times, or a shift, or crisis, or spiritual awakening, or whatever, to find a new idea for that idea to come to time, to fruition for a culture, for enough people. And it's one thing for the individual, like Ernie Hancock gets it, and he's out in the middle of the desert, right? He gets it. But I'm talking just the majority of people who are basically ruling a land, who are going to sit there and tell the majority rules, which I don't like that concept. I get it. I get it. The individuals should be ruling themselves, and we each have our little feudal little areas and gray chickens and play rock music and shoot fireworks off all you want. Diehard libertarian world. I get it. But that's not real world ultimately for how most people are now. They'd have to change to that. And that's what I'm trying to get to, is will it change back to that, where the majority of people, if we need the majority, I would assume we would, the majority of people to be diehard independent, live on the land like our ancestors did, like the founding fathers in that critical moment of time. And can we get back to that? And I'm just posing that as a question, like Tucker Carlson, because I really don't know. My feeling, unfortunately, is that we cannot, at least not in my lifetime at all, let alone maybe for a couple generations or more, in my opinion. I could be wrong, and I certainly want to be wrong. And I would be no more happier than ever for the whole world to suddenly get red-pilled Ernie Hancock style, and just everyone just quit, leave the cities. New York, I mean, it's already gone, people are leaving anyway. But, every city, everyone just walks out, grabs a plot of land all the way out in the middle of Tennessee somewhere, or up in Alaska, and says, I'm staking my land right here, and I'm going at it. Nothing would make me happier.
Which used to be an American tradition. The Homestead Act allowed it up until the mid-'90s, and it's still there even then, but the Clinton administration eliminated the office that accepted the paperwork. So there you go. I'm homesteading it.
Wait, they eliminated the office for the paperwork? That has stopped that? Really?
Yeah, they didn't have to stop the homesteading. They just couldn't process it.
Isn't that convenient? Oh, that's wonderful. Saying. That's so American bureaucracy. So therefore, the question is, can we get enough people to go back to that? And then when I think, okay, how do we do it before? That's why I did that long monologue about the history that led to that. People out with the mosquitoes and the farms and fighting the noblemen, and just all of that stuff that was such a raw moment. And how are we going to get to that now when we're just like other countries or cultures in the world, where we have societies and cities, and we're even more unified than ever with the internet? I mean, it's just the internet alone. As much as we have problems with the internet, it's modern society to be able to communicate. Again, if we all want our money system online, you can't just connect from a system to the level that we were before. And so the question is, can someone be as independent in their truest red-blooded American, John Adams, apple pie, independence, give me a musket, get the hell off my land, I'm going to shoot you, and I'm do whatever the hell I want to do, and F you, and all of this, the way our ancestors were, can that be compatible with modern society of the internet age, of globalism? And I say globalism, not the George Soros version, just to be clear. I'm talking about a shrinking world where, back in our ancestors' day, do you think George Washington or any of them ever met a Japanese person? I mean, maybe George Washington did, it's possible. But I mean, do you think like any colonist ever met someone from Japan? Did you ever think been to Japan? Do you think they even had a picture of? They even had photographs back then. I mean, it's like to think about a time when you didn't even know. I mean, Japan is somewhere on some map. You heard that they looked a little different. Maybe someone brought something back, a trinket from some explorer, and you went, wow. I mean, you couldn't even fathom what the rest of the world was doing. Like that's the heck. Not to mention Pennsylvania or Georgia. You have no clue what anyone's doing. It is so hard for people to understand that concept. So today, when we're just, immediately we know if a tsunami happens off in Sri Lanka or something, like we know everything at all times. And so to take that away, already people are addicted to the internet, but even you and I, we're news junkies, let's be honest, to sit there and be tuned out from all that. We are part of that communication system, and we are part of a group of intelligence, maybe or lack of intelligence, but it is. So these two things are opposites. It doesn't mean they can't be compatible. It's just that when you have pure independence and I'm just doing my own thing and we're plow to the field, and then you have the world that's being pulled together in many, many ways, how do they connect? And I honestly don't know. So it's not that I'm forfeiting, like Phranq doesn't believe in the Bill of Rights anymore and this, that. No, it's not that at all. I'm looking at it like a sociologist, like how does that work out? And I don't see it. The only way I can see it, a couple options, and I am curious to see your thoughts on it too, sincerely, but like here's just a couple models. One is that the people who really want to be true, the old school, I hate to call it old school, it's like I'm like disavowing our own libertarian mindset here, but is that we go the way of the Amish. It's like, okay, like we just become kind of these quirky people that they want to stay to their own. They want to be off-gridders and not play with the rest of us, kind of like the goth kids in school. And we're going to be the Amish, and we're going to have our own place all in the middle of nowhere. And yeah, it's kind of, that's a good strategy when you want to be left alone. Like Ernie, I always love when you say, hey, am I far enough away? It's like a guy with a badge won't want to spend the gas to come visit me with his badge. I guess I'm good now. I mean, it's so there's that mentality. And maybe we create our own communities, which of course I think will happen, but they will be.
It's already happening.
One option
here.
Is it's just going to be. Well, I know it's happening, but the thing is, that's a strong minority, and if that's what the goal is, hey, let everyone else be part of the group think, and we're just going to have our own society, live our own life over here. Can I at least, as you say, also, can I not care, and can I just be left alone, right? And if there's a copacetic, like, hey, if you want to check out, as long as you're not rocking the boat, you do your thing all the way over there. And maybe there's a detente where, you live completely on your own, like the Amish, and you don't have to be in the military, and you don't have to pay the same taxes, and you can, but you're not going to be set up to the grid, and you're not going to have access to Social Security. Go figure. And if we go deal, then I'm all on board with that one. Not to mention you're closer to God, you're healthier, we have better communication skills with people. Men are men, women are women. I mean, I'm completely on board. And you know what? If that's really what we're looking at, is not turning over 51% of this country or more for the whole country to turn into that, and we're just left alone as our own little isolate area, then that's one way of the model of the Bill of Rights kind of mentality to manifest in today's world. Now, there's another one. Here's another model. See what you think about this. And this one is a real flip of a coin. And this comes down to the love-hate relationship we have with AI. Because, I do look at all of these, Sam, not Bankman, what's his name? Sam Altman, all these tech guys, and all of them are Victor Frankensteins. And by the way, I saw the new Frankenstein movie by De Toro. It was only in a limited theaters for Halloween. It's like his masterpiece. It's like the most reverential movie of the true story of Frankenstein. If you want to check it out, it's on Netflix now for those of you who have it, but it really is a great movie. If you don't know the actual story of Frankenstein, is pretty cool. But anyway, it's the whole concept, right? I mean, it's they're creating, it's like none of them have seen Frankenstein or Jurassic Park and realize they're creating the next monster. But in theory, we can argue about how it's going to play out, if it's going to be, how painful this transition is going to be, people losing their jobs, the economy falling apart. Are we going to get universal basic income? Who's going to pay for that? We're just going to print the money up, blah, blah. I mean, it's just all of these problems that we're seeing that we opened the show with. Okay, all that's the reset. It's the transition. It's going to be an historic transition that, 1,000 years from now, historians are going to look back and look at this moment, The equivalent is when fire was discovered, or when agriculture was first. Yes. Well, it's not just the fall. Yeah. Well, you're right. It's the fall of like the Western nations and the last remains of colonialism and all of this, and a mindset. All of that's going away, and what we turn into, and that also brings in biotech, and as we become like cyborgs and genetic manipulation, and I mean, there's so many, Gattaca, we can go all day, but all these things are happening at the same time. But what I'm trying to get to with this model is, once we get through this fire, walking through the fire, the coals with Tony Robbins, and he's another piece of work. But as we get through that, what do we look like on the other end? And I don't know. I have said, and I stand by this, that it's going to be a whole different mindset about how we think about ourselves. And you and I are
always going to go back to freedom.
And
Freedom's the answer. What's the question?
Well, anyone listening to me now is way too old and will be dead by the time this decision is made, these so-called decisions. But it's going to be the new generations, maybe those that are just being born today, that are going to be born with an iPhone in their head, unfortunately. But they're going to be, and for the good and the bad, they're going to see a lot of good, and they're going to see potential of humanity and balance things out. How much of their humanity, and I hate to say this, do they give up for what benefits? And what does humanity look like in the future? And not to be funny, but what if the aliens that turned out are real, or what the technologies come from that, or when the whole world finally becomes more unified and globalist, not from George Soros' takeover, but just after 100 or so years of everyone not knowing what Japan was 200 years ago, but playing video games with some guy in Japan in some, I don't know, live stream gaming channel. I mean, it's so fluid now that these cultures are going to be intertwining and creating something new. As long as it's not forced, I'm okay with it. And in time, we will have some more of a globalist culture. I'm just against the forcing of it. But let's say we get through to this other side. The promise of the Sam Altmans, which I think is full of crap per se, but they're saying, look, we got to deal with it. It's coming anyway. You can't resist the future. Can't fight the future. Terminator 2. But we're thinking about the Jetsons, right? That's what the claim they're kind of making, is that once everyone, gets their jobs replaced, they'll find other jobs, new jobs that will be created by the AI industry and all these factories of robots, and someone's got to clean the robots, I guess, or someone's, whatever. I don't know what they're going to do, but ancillary around this new environment where the robots and AI is going to take over almost every job. And once it does that, well, then the people get to go painting. It's like that Star Trek episode where, everything's done for them, and they just get to play music and sit around and have sex, I guess, and orgies and whatever, whatever you want to do. And that tends to be the other extreme. Now, I don't want to oversimplify it, but what I'm bringing together is maybe the other model of how we get to Ernie's world of, we're all occupying the land and living ourselves, our own closer God and family, which is ultimately what I would agree to, is maybe it can't really occur where this idea is too early, because we have to get to a way where society does not need to be in cities anymore. That was what I was trying to get to, is that once we left the wilderness from the colonies into cities after the Industrial Revolution, we're like every other country. When you have consolidated industries and societies and cities, and it's hard to break from that, and it's powerful to stay together. Like the Chinese will say, one stick you can break, but a bundle of sticks you can't break. So it becomes more powerful over the individual. But the only way we get back to the individual is that the cities become obsolete. You don't need to be in a city. And we saw a taste of this during COVID, when all of a sudden you didn't have to be at work. You could use remote working that we didn't have before. I mean, remember the one
commercial real estate's going.
It was the word of the year, I think, was Zoom. Remember, but in 2019, like no one really knew about Zoom, except maybe some of us, perhaps. But all of a sudden, 2020, 2021, it's like Zoom. All of a sudden, it was like the #1 downloaded app in like the world, probably. And so we got a taste of it. And now AI is going to go back and manifest us even more. So maybe, if it's not as it won't be traumatic, but if we get to the Jetsons world where all the labor and the work is done for us for the most part, then we will be able to say, okay, I can disconnect now. Everything's done. There'll be cities of robots and computers running everything, infrastructure. But, maybe the telecommunication, of course, comes from the satellites, just like it is now, Skylink. And so you can be out in the middle of nowhere and you can just occupy the land. And maybe this will be where humanity ultimately goes and returns back to individualism as a consequence of AI being a complement to humanity. Now, I know it sounds very optimistic, but it is one way that I could see your worldview being a dominant culture again. But I don't see in today's world, without the help, strangely enough, of AI that I personally dread and very concerned about. But it could just be because I'm from an older world. Anyway, what do you think about those two models? And if you don't think either one of those will apply, do you have another that you think 51% of the majority can be thinking like the founding fathers? Or do you think we're just going to be our own special group that just does their own thing just to be left alone? What do you think?
Freedom. Freedom. That's why it's so popular. It's why it's such a threat. And it's why they're attacking Christianity so much. Why? What do they give a crap about Christianity? Why is it such a threat? Because it is the individual, it is Christian ethics, it is protection of the individual right to be an individual and own themselves and answer to a higher authority. It's about, Christian forgiveness and redemption and being able to better yourself. And, I just don't see. I never understood why. Why are they going after? I mean, here we even got Zelensky going after churches and Putin. It's weird. Putin is like, I'm the most Christian nation on the planet. Screw you guys. Wow. It is so, and Christianity is infiltrated everywhere. China, Korea, Japan. I mean, it's amazing how enticing that philosophy is when you tie it into freedom, that you own yourself, you're responsible for yourself, you have a community of people that believe a certain way, which is substantiated by experience. It works. So I'm going, that will always be there. It can never go away. And this is what I always said over the years. You remember me saying this. I go, they can't get away with what they're doing because humanity is so baked in to what humanity is at a fundamental level, that we act in what we perceive to be our own self-interest with ethics that, allow others to pursue their own happiness, and you don't have a right to take that away for your benefit. Or, this basic fundamental thing, unless they are able to change humanity with mRNA vaccines, with immersion into a bombardment from all directions of a psyop of the people on the planet and then they do it, of course, in an atmosphere of fear and want and scarcity. Musk came up with his last shareholder meeting, sustainable abundance. This concept is what I've been talking about. The future is abundance. Well, the abundance is going to come from what? Robots, AI, whatever. And I'm going, well, that was kind of the argument for computers. The IT industry, especially during the 90s, was, oh my God, here we go. Well, that productivity just got sucked out of us and went to government. Higher taxes, more permits. It was like when they did the smart city thing that Patrick Wood and I would do presentations on. He was on the technocracy part and what they're doing. And I'm going, I just need to know where the money's coming from. How are they funding this? This isn't a natural occurrence. This is something that has to be mandated you will be ruled by our scientific technological elite, which is what Eisenhower said that was the real threat. When they talk about the military-industrial complex, he said that was a result of being ruled by a scientific technological elite. To what? To equip and fund the military-industrial complex. This is what he was warning of. They keep focusing on that military thing, which is, one of the things, but it was in that speech. It was a scientific technological elite that he knew was behind it. He might as well just said deep state, So I see that that's always been the battle. And that's why all the eugenicists and all the, New World Order guys and we rule you and IBM goes and does a punch card for every Jew kind of thing and Nazi Germany and, there they are, go round them up. It's the same thing. If they can't, identify them, then, or even if they do identify them, why? They can put them in camps. Why put them in camps if you could just steal from them? If you can just rob them, if you can manipulate them, if you get them to serve the system. This has always been the goal. So then you get Kissinger comes out with, I was doing a show with Corbett, and he was really focusing on Kissinger's thing when he gave his speeches about, you control people with food. This is going to be a food thing sooner or later. And that's why Donna and I kind of changed our time scale on a lot of things, and she finished her garden and we're starting to work on that. We got up the area that we're going to be putting the chickens in. We kind of diverted our attention a little bit from the build to get the food going, then we'll get back to it, and we're about that point right now. I got to go clear land for my next container. I got to build the roof there. There's a lot of stuff going on. I got plenty to keep me busy, and I got my tractor. But this is our mindset, because I am so convinced of the badness of these people, the evil, the intent. You know the future when you look at the intent. What is their intent? Their intent is control. Their intent is to rule you. Their intent, I got this here gun and shiny badge and a clipboard. You're not afraid of the clipboard? Well, what about this gun? Or we're going to take your stuff. This is happening all over the world, and it's a single philosophy of because they can until they can't. When the economy goes, there's going to be a time of, I don't think they can. How are we going to survive? They don't care. There's the same thing with Gaza. It's blood guilt. They just, Levine comes up and says, I don't care about that. Yeah, them and all their babies too. I'm like, wow, man, where is this acceptable position anywhere on the? It's only here. What? So I'm so not discouraged, but refocused on what really matters: general public opinion towards what? Well, they think they're winning. They got, the Democrat in Virginia and in New Jersey, and they got the mayor in Seattle and New York City. And I'm going, get out of the cities, man. Get more rule. Or you're going to be ruled by these people. And you have in a lot of small cities in Michigan have been taken over by Muslims. They immigrate from all over wherever. They come, we've got Somaliland in Michigan, and they, we rule you now, get over it. And all of a sudden you get the mosque blaring, prayer over the speakers, and, they, melted the church bell down and put up a mosque tower. This is really, it's like when 9/11 happened, what did they want to build on the site next to the site there? A mosque. People freaked out.
Oh, yeah.
And whatever.
Yeah, I remember that.
I don't care, man. Build and do whatever you want, as long as what? You don't interfere with my pursuit of happiness. You don't steal my stuff. You want different, cuisine and holidays. Well, I don't give a crap. That doesn't affect me. But like what you're talking about, the culture of what? do these cultures emphasize collective guilt and collective chosen people kind of stuff? Because in the Muslim religion, it's very clear in the Quran, man, if you're not with us, you're dead, you know? So this is, what is the bulwark against that? It's a philosophy. It's the guarantees that they promised us in the Declaration, Bill of Rights. I'm going, if we don't get back to that, we're going to lose, you know, a lot. Well, will the American people or humans in general allow that? And for how long? They will suffer these pains while they are sufferable. But over time, it will be so intolerant to the people that they'll rise up. This is, you know, what the Declaration was about. They're going to look, you know, we must acquiesce in the necessity and say, nope. Well, is that happening? Yeah, a lot of people are doing it, but they're mostly doing it quietly. They're just, you know, like you. You know, you got your backup electrical system of, I'm going to be able to watch TV while it's a blackout of everybody. So you got your unit, which that Delta unit now is getting to where it's about $3,000 and you power your, I mean, that's freaking ridiculous how cheap this stuff is getting. I bought 15 kilowatts of power for $1,200 that I'm putting in the workshop. I have so much power that I got 3 kick butt power stations and I hadn't even built the house yet. You know, so I'm good on the power thing, which was something that I focused on because I knew that was going to be a linchpin for everything that I wanted to do. All the water I wanted to transfer, I wanted to pressurize, equipment I wanted to run, things I wanted. So I do everything electric or batteries because it's free. Now I have diesel, you know, for the bus generator and the tractor, but you know, I'm good. So I'm good. Is anybody else? They gonna want to come park their RV and live off our Ernie sunshine? You know, well, I better know you and like you, and you be of the right philosophy. I can guarantee that. But generally, you know, I just as soon be left alone and have family out here. But my family, they're not. You know, I went and visited some of the kids yesterday, and they're that'd be cool. Yeah, you know, we come out and play tractor, and but they're not in the mindset. I just want them to understand that it's available. That at some point, as my grandkids starting to become of age, and they're now my granddaughter's a junior, the oldest one, and she'll be graduating next year. She's already looking for universities, wants to do soccer scholarship and all this other crap. But I'm going, okay, and then what? Do you know how to build? Are you doing the prep? I got the book, the preparation for my grandson that's 15, and I was telling him yesterday. I go, yeah, they were on Glenn Beck. Talking about this and doing it's rocketing, and we're putting up more stuff and pushing it and whatever. You need to get on it, man. Start looking at these things. And a lot of that is out here on Occupy the Land. You want to get learnified on a bunch of, I can make a nest for my little birdie that wants to come stay with me, raise a family. You can learn that stuff. Do you got to do it? No, that's not the point. Be a man. And what is the definition of a man? A man is someone that can take care of himself and a family. When you have take on the authority and you have the responsibility and you meet that responsibility by providing for your family, man, and you have kids, I'd say, man, that classifies as a man. Just because you're 23 and, have sex with somebody doesn't make you a man. A man is someone that can take care of a family. Work on that. So I see a lot of, I'm all about AI, accentuating my humanity, allowing me to be more creative. And we were talking about that last night at the meeting, how they use AI for a lot of different stuff. And I can see, I'm going to be doing a show, when I get time, on my interfacing with Grok. Because the only thing I really talk about other than getting measurements or something is that, or materials or where to find stuff, is that how is it that you process this information? What's your philosophy? How is that based? Who did that? What did that? Where do you get? What are you training on? Da 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 da. It was a fascinating conversation. and I'll bring that in. I got the text saved on that because I want to do a show on it, because it is so much potential of what a tool that can be for humanity. That was a question I had to the Students for Liberty head guy, last night. I'm going, how do you see this? Is it a double-edged sword? It's going to be used against us and for us? Are they activists? Are you guys, young Students for Liberty, Austrian economic libertarian people? Are you seeing it as a weapon against a man, or is it a threat? They see it as a tool, because philosophy is what protects them from the crap that they're trying to shove down their throat. And the people that they're trying to get, like Charlie Kirk was trying to do, like a lot of the guys going over to Fuentes, I don't see the overlap, really, the same philosophy between the two, but, it is, and that's one thing. Phranq was going on about, this Nick Fuentes thing, man, it's going to be a thing. He's a thing. It's a thing. Well, he may be very popular, but is it long lasting? And what is it about him that makes him popular with the young men? I don't know. He's not taking it anymore or something, or whatever.
You don't know.
I don't. Well, I know.
No? I mean,
I don't.
I'm not going into it. The plight of young men today are all angry, screwed. I mean, just in so many ways, and ignored. It's a pressure cooker of young men, and that's the scary thing. You are seeing the avatar for what is just brewing and about to pop from the young people. And the fact, and all due respect, you're like, you don't know. That's what's the problem, is that the older generation has been so infighting amongst ourselves and living in an older world like grandpas. We don't realize just this whole younger generation that has been ignored from a lot of times the baby boomers themselves. I won't do it just quickly.
Well, the big
on this.
threat is just his opposition to Israel.
Wait. Yeah, but what I mean is, like, normally people grow, they have kids, and then after their kids leave, or maybe when they're about to leave, they maybe get into civics, maybe when they're 40s, 50s, and then they leave in their 60s and they hang out with the grandkids. That's how it normally was, and you pass it on to the generation behind you, and it just propagates that. That's how it's always been, and except the last 50 years, or especially the last 30 years. And we could, I don't want to get into all the reasons why. I mean, it's baby boomer culture. A lot of it is corruption. A lot of it is the empire trying to keep itself going since the 90s, when we're a peak empire as a nation, if you call it that. But it's because you have these older generations will not leave. And if they don't leave, whether it's business, industry, politics, obviously, the deep state, it's the same people, the same culture, but the same generational people. And they're never turning it over to the younger. And so they didn't really turn it over to my generation as much, to be honest. I saw that in Hollywood, strangely enough. Just how the old directors wouldn't let go and let the younger generation come in and make the movies that the younger people really wanted to see. And when they finally had a chance and they made, like, the Marvel movies, the original Marvel movies were made by people who actually read the comic books. My generation finally had a chance at that. And what do we get? Lord of the Rings. We got Spider-Man movies. We got movies that people finally wanted to see. It wasn't junk versions of it, the older generation. But just apply that in the political circles and everything. And so every time you see an older person still running the government, whether it's Trump, Pelosi, I mean, all of them.
And they're getting older.
Every time you see that, think about that. To think about that, yeah, they keep getting older, and they're often strokes on TV like McConnell and the Turtle. But every time you see one of them, you have to then realize that is a 20 or 30-year-old that is not in that seat. And it's hard to imagine that our Constitution allows, representatives, 25?
AOC!
Like 25-year-old. I mean, can you imagine a 25? You can imagine that maybe a third or a quarter of our Congress made up of 25-year-olds or 28-year-olds. We would think, oh my God, they're all children.
Well, 250 years ago, they weren't children.
Act like kids. Exactly. So it's the combination that we've created this coddled, scoreless baseball culture, and we've muted, and it was too much male toxicity and all the crap that we have levied on that generation. But at the same time, it's like we're telling them to be a kid, and you're not doing it right, and then we're not giving the opportunity to do it or to show. or for them to evolve or to grow up. So they're being hit on both sides. They're stunted themselves. A lot of it's social media and video games. A lot of it is, but it's the generation itself that for some reason, and I don't get this is another conversation that you and I could go into another time, but the older generation does not want to give the reins, like the car keys, to the younger generation. There's a lot of reasons for it. But that
they got a plan and a narrative, and that ain't it.
But they're getting ignored. They're getting ignored where, and Ernie, I'm not going to keep coming back to it like I'm trying to give you a hard time with this, but that's a famous quote. I like that one. Like, I don't know why he's popular. The fact that you said that is the whole point. That whole generation is like the, generation.
Let's just ask Grok. I got it right here. Okay. Why is Nick Fuentes so popular? Oh man, it's taking a while on that one. Yeah. Ask anything. Let's see.
It's asking the overlords.
Let me restart it. Okay, connecting. Why is Nick Fuentes so popular?
You should say so popular with the youth, young men.
Well, I don't care why. Just
Well, that's where he's popular.
Well, usually it goes pretty fast. When it does takes this long, it's because it's processing.
It's checking in with the deep state. What's allowable?
The deep state. Yeah. It's like you're not allowed to ask that. I think it's working. Well, I'll just leave it over there until it does its thing. Sometimes on something like that, it's like, I know I should just say in 200 words or less, why is he so popular? And it's interesting, what you get, from this. And, let's see, popularity reasons explored. Okay. Why is it? Yeah, man, it's that unfiltered rage. That was it. Yeah, man, it's that unfiltered rage.
Really, that's a Grok set.
Yeah, and I'm going. It didn't do the audio. Maybe I got it silenced. Okay, in 200 words or less, the popularity of Nick Fuentes with young men is due to what? In 200 words or less, Nick Fuentes' popularity with young men is due to what? Come on.
By the way, Ernie, will I be able to hear it?
Well, I'm going to put it up.
My speaker. Okay.
Okay. Let's see. 300 words left. Nick Fuentes' appeal to young men, it's a cocktail of raw frustration and savvy showmanship. These guys, often in their late teens to 20s, are pissed at the world. Okay. I mean, you can do better. I mean, why not? I mean, should I get anything else from Grok? Do I need 1,000 words? Because I could hit, think deeper or, give me more or something like that. But it's just style frustration and, saying stuff that they feel and, that's it. I don't think it's not a deep freedom-oriented, solution-oriented. It's just rage. It's just mad at.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's what I was talking about a couple of weeks ago. It's like as much as I know the importance of philosophy, you remember I was saying that story, it was a good anecdote I gave about my wife, Savarda. And, the quick version is how, she was not very political when I met her, and, unfortunately I corrupted her. And then when we got to the Ron Paul years, she would say, "Oh, I'm for Ron Paul because, end the Fed and sound money and, just the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and I'm not trying to oversimplify it, but there were principled issues, no more wars and blowback from our involvement overseas. Like there are principled things, and we get to Trump 1.0. It was kind of like a little blend of what it is now. And when we got to Trump 2.0 and Ernie was here with Donna on election night, it became almost rage from someone who, is like Mother Goose. I mean, It's like Mrs. Cleaver half the most of the time. And so she all of a sudden, it wasn't about sound money or philosophy. It's what the damn left did to us, and they censored us, and they took shots at Trump, and they tried with a mug shot, and they tried forcing this drug in our arm, and we couldn't see our family when they were dying in a hospital, and almost made us quit our entire profession. And I mean, that. And so it was not philosophy anymore. Now, you and I are still debating.
Yeah, see, that's my point.
The Trump report
is a philosophy thing.
Exactly. But that's my point. You and I still go on it, and I understand where you're coming from. But I'm seeing in the outside world where the philosophy is just being jettisoned, not just because it's getting lost because of the diatribe I gave earlier about technology and cities and the evolution of society. I mean, that's all true. But you add to the point where people just start throwing their hands up, where they feel under attack, and so you don't have time to worrying about philosophy. And I know you're going to disagree with that, as that's the part you lose. That's how you lose the whole thing. So I understand how you're going to probably think about it, but I just mean from the normies out there trying to explain to them about sound money and how Austrian economics works when they're getting attacked and people are stealing and you got home. It's just like they just throw, and when the young people have nothing, they're being told that they're lazy. The baby boomers are complaining they don't have enough Social Security. We're in wars all over the world giving all this money to Israel or whoever else. And then, they can't buy a house and they can't have kids, and then they can't, the whole thing. And they're being ignored. And then Ernie says, I don't know why they're angry. And again, not to pick on you, but that's what most of America fighting amongst Democrat, Republican, Epstein, all of that. We're busy fighting amongst ourselves, and it's like parents going through a divorce and they're arguing at the table
why
constantly.
Mondami wins New York City.
And they don't realize that the children are in their bedrooms listening to this fight, and they're seeing everything fall apart, and the adults are fighting, and they completely are missing that what they're doing to their kids. And I'm saying that as a child from a divorced family. I have a lot of memories that affected me. Okay, that's what this is. That's what happened to Savard.
What are the main issues that make Nick Fuentes so popular with young men? Come on. See, it's answering, but it's not doing it in the video. I mean, with audio, it's doing text because I got some.
But I'll tell you something that's interesting. Imagine you're a young person. You're being told.
Well, let me read what it says. Well, I think it's mostly his timeless charm and authenticity. I don't think he's that charming. Young guys seem to love how Dick Van Dyke's still sharp at 99, his quick wit and playful. Oh, that was hearing me. Yeah, I thought I said Dick Van Dyke. Yeah, never mind. Anyway,
that was the ultimate whiplash. Well, what I was going to say is...
Yeah, his charm. I'm going, what the hell's charming about him?
Yeah, exactly. That was funny. But no, imagine you're a 20-year-old and you've been told since most of your life, right, about pronouns and my two mommies and, from the book and all the stuff that we ancillary have learned. Then how many parents didn't even understand what their kids were learning until 2020, right? I mean, there was that whole scandal.
Right.
People were watching
that was a big thing. This is the delegation of raising your children to Uncle Sam. That was the mistake.
Right.
We're not taking the responsibility.
So you see that, and then, and then you start to realize why your kid is becoming, weak or soft or just wants to play games. And is it because they're lazy, or is it because why should they go work and get a car when the entire money that you work all day at McDonald's just to pay off the car insurance for a car that you can't even get a date because all the girls are on Tinder, and there's a whole and you're told not to be a man to even attract those kind of women, so you don't even know what a man is anymore. Heck, the country doesn't even know what the hell a woman is. I mean, all of this is happening to kids going through puberty, trying to understand who they are, and the entire nation is going through a goddamn identity crisis as a culture, as a technology, everything.
I had the phone on. I had the phone on.
That's where Nick Fuentes is coming from. So when you see Nick Fuentes get up there and he starts dropping F-bombs and saying things that you supposedly can't say, that is the release that many people felt with Trump when he got up on the stage.
But it's not substantive.
I'm not saying, you could call it empty calories, but maybe it is substantive in a way to see a.
It's representative, but it's not substantive. This is the reason it wasn't doing the audio. The reason it wasn't doing the audio was because I had it on Bluetooth. So let me try it again. All right, here we go.
Okay, Dick.
What are the issues that are the most important that make Nick Fuentes so popular with young men?
Man, Nick Fuentes really clicks with a lot of young guys because he's like this raw, unfiltered voice in a world that feels stacked against him. Top issues? First off, economic frustration. Can't buy a house. Jobs suck. Feels like the system's rigged to leave him behind. He taps into that anger, saying, tear it down instead of playing nice. Second, cultural backlash, feminism, wokeness, and what he calls globo-homo, pushing guys toward this soft, emasculated vibe. They're craving that tough, traditional manhood he sells. Third, identity stuff, demographic changes, immigration, and straight-up white interests. He says out loud what they're scared to whisper about extinction or replacement. Oh, and his edginess, Holocaust jokes, anti-Israel rants, that's catnip for dudes who see offensive as a badge of authenticity. It's nihilistic hope, basically. Charismatic dude validating their rage without the corporate polish. Kinda sad, but yeah, it resonates.
That was pretty accurate.
Well, first off, you know what that proves is that Ernie doesn't pay me enough because you don't need Grok. You got me because I just said that same thing. And I even asked Grok. That's exactly what I was saying. And what I was about to say is he's like the new version for young people of what Trump was for a lot of Americans who felt ignored, who felt they had to whisper, they couldn't say anything, they had pronouns. And he gets up there and says, you know what? A woman has boobs, and just to say it. Now, is that crass? Yes. Do we understand about, treating people equally? We get it. But it's the concept that you're being told you can't do something. So he's just going to say it. And he became a voice for people in many ways. He dropped an F-bomb, or he'd say certain things that, strangely enough, just 10 years ago, we could say, quote unquote, and people felt silenced and the pressure cooker. And he was the release. And the left couldn't understand it. They really thought that he was making everybody suddenly racist and bigoted and hate everybody. No. He was kind of just like a joke. It's like when the teachers get too strict and the students just decide, if you have to wear a green outfit and suddenly you decide to wear a red one just for the hell of it, just to say it, just because he can, right? That's what Nick Fuentes is for the entire young generation. It's been cooped up in pressure cooker. And again, no offense, but when you say, I don't know why they like him, that's the same reason people didn't understand Trump. But now it's infected another generation, but even more under pressure. And since Charlie Kirk went, who was the translator from the MAGA movement, trying to calm it down to the youth and try to explain to the older generation, like Trump, what the youth were saying, what they were not allowed to say. And he was the only outlet for that voice to be heard. And then he gets shot, right? And that's what I said. When that happened, I said on your show, this guy, Nick Fuentes, who I never even listened to. I think I saw a couple clips maybe, but I already got it. Like, I got him. Like, you see things, and I got Trump early. I get this guy Fuentes, and I understand the young generation with this for different reasons. And it's this culture thing, and he tapped right into it, good, bad, indifferent. And now you have spinoffs. You've got, you've got Candace Owens and Tucker and all of them. And, they're not all saying the same thing, but they're all tapping into the same vein. So anyway, if you want to give a last comment on that, but I think it's a good question you asked earlier about Trump and where he is now, and how the one thing Trump's doing is, going to this whole larger point,
all right, here we go.
He's unifying America in a different way.
Here we go. Nick Fuentes' solutions for young men is what? Does he offer solutions or a movement or something that young men should do?
Good question.
Come on. I didn't. Well, let's see if it wrote it. No. Okay, let me try it again. Does Nick Fuentes offer solutions, and what are they for young men to do? Come on.
Yeah, all right.
Repeat, please.
Sure, he does push solutions, but they're pretty radical and echo chambery. For young men, it's all about building parallel structures. Ditch mainstream jobs for America First gigs, like starting small businesses or going into trades that keep you independent. Politically, he says vote third party or build a new right-wing party, boycott woke brands, and get hyper-local run for school boards, organize meetups. Personally, hit the gym, arm up, read trad lit like Evola, and network with groypers online to form tribes. Basically, reject the system, fortify your own world, and wait for the collapse to remake it. Edgy motivation, but it fires him up.
Maybe he's a young Ernie. I don't know.
No, I know. What I'm saying, it's not as far off as you think. And a lot of what they say about him are I've realized real quickly, of course, are lies. And that's why and it's a great analogy. And it was Nick who said this himself. He said basically he's a creation of the Jewish lobby of Ben Shapiro. He said it's kind of like the movie Gladiator when what's his name, Russell Crowe gets stabbed in the back by his own people, right, and left
Maximus.
to die out in the wilderness. And he gets stabbed and left to die. They assume he's dead, and it's like 10 years later he didn't die. He comes back. He works his way through as a gladiator, as a slave, gets hardened up. And then all of a sudden he survives and he gets reunited with the guy who stabbed him in the back, who's now in power. And that's what happened is that Nick Fuentes was stabbed in the back at 18 years old or 17 by Ben Shapiro specifically for whoever he's working for. And he was left out to die and rot and career-wise and tarnished, and he lost his a lot of his family members and his friends. He talked about the story in detail. I actually heard it. And he even talked about it in Tucker Carlson's interview. I'm sure you heard it too. And he went through this whole thing. And, it's 10 years being called every name under the sun. He got debanked. He couldn't even use a bank. He couldn't fly planes. Like he was banned everywhere, and he didn't relent. In fact, he doesn't even have a girl. He says, I'm not even bothered with a girlfriend because what girlfriend wants to put up with this? Because they're going to go after her anyway. They're going to attack everything about me. He says, I don't need it. I'm built for this moment. I'm just going to keep doing this. And if they want to take me out, that's fine, but I'm going to stick to this. And he's, so that's him. And then all of a sudden, he finally, Trump wins again. The Overton window shifts. People are talking about this. And then Trump, as we can now segue into towards the end here, has his worst year ever. I mean, he did it to himself. As Rush Limbaugh famously said, only Trump could destroy Trump. And he's done it very well. And he's separated his base worse than I think he even understands. And it's I don't know if it is repairable at this point. And that's a whole loaded issue we didn't even get into for today. Maybe we'll talk about it more next week. But he's destroyed it. And now Nick Fuentes suddenly is looking like the prodigal son or the one who predicted all of this entire time. He, in fact, as much as he's America first, he never says MAGA. He says America first. He has a big AF he has on his backdrops and his mugs and his T-shirts. They all say AF. So
is that what that means? Okay.
Yeah, and America first, which is saying, okay, Donald Trump has branded MAGA. I guess he owns MAGA, but he has not branded or owns America first. So I'm not positive, but I think that's the case. So therefore, that's why Trump keeps going, I determine who's MAGA. Fine. So, okay, if you're MAGA and you're letting in all these immigrants or you're sitting there bowing down to Israel, then you make that MAGA. We're America first. And this distinction for possibly a third party, including Tucker Carlson just last night when he dropped the video with Anna Kasparin of the Young Turks. I predicted this the last few weeks. I've been watching this blending of like the sensible Democrats who are starting to walk away from the left and then the conservatives, and they all have one thing in common is stop getting involved in these wars. And they're also getting off these traditional old media platforms. And once you leave, you start to realize how brainwashed you were. I mean, they've all said it, whether Megan, Tucker, they've all said that, they didn't realize how much they thought they were free thinking at Fox, as an example, and they didn't know what they didn't know until they left. And then you have this breath of fresh air. It's like leaving the city and going out into the wilderness, and you take a deep breath like where you're at, and you can just sense it's different. And they're all noticing it, including people on the left, like when they left MSNBC to do the Young Turks, for instance. They're all sensing it, and they're realizing how much of the hatred on both sides has been manufactured. Go figure, Ernie. I'm sure you're shocked. So they're all figuring this out. So anyway, this is where now they're seeing it, and here's Nick Fuentes, who's been brewing this entire time, like the gladiator guy, and now Ben Shapiro, who purposely had Nick under his boot for 10 years. And now the whole thing is shifted where people are allowed to say,
well, under his boot. Why? Was he on Daily Wire or something? And
no.
Fuentes?
Nick?
I mean, that's
no, well, yeah, I would encourage you to check out that interview with Tucker again when you get a chance, because he goes into long form. But basically, he was picked out at like one of these Young Republicans for Freedom events, or maybe it was a Turning Point.
No, he
thing.
was debating the Boston University president of the student council or something on this stuff.
Yeah. It was in a college and all, and he
kicked ass, and then they targeted. You say, "Hey, man, you're the man with some mozzarella. We need you."
Well, yeah. Well, what the link was, there was a woman, I forget her name, Colleen or Collins or something like that, but she worked for Daily Wire, or she had connections with Ben Shapiro at Daily Wire, and she's the one that saw the debate at the college, whatever, and said, "Hey, Ben." She specifically got in contact with Ben and said, "Look, here's a young guy, and he's doing really good. He's really smart. I think he could be." It's like a sorority pledge or a frat. We kind of like this guy. We should let him in. So Ben, who claimed for up until just last week that he didn't know who Nick Fuentes was. Right? He goes, "I don't know. He's some guy, whatever." Well, that's why Ben Shapiro's credibility went down the tubes on top of everything else, because he's been saying for years that he will not comment on Nick because he's like below his radar and doesn't even care enough to even learn who this guy is. And
I'm
now
not
we're finding out that
him.
he knew 10 years ago and purposely, actively did everything to destroy his career. This is why it's boomeranged in such a way. So he's representing the Ben Shapiro angle, Ernie, is representing, and this is a bit tangential, but it's representing the Epstein thing. How the Epstein thing, it's not just about the corruption and the sex, it's the deeper level of what's going on around us that you don't know, and the manipulation, and that's what the Shapiro thing is. And Nick Fuentes, whether you like him or not, is coming out a victim, and that's all you need to do is make someone a victim, and they become a hero to a lot of people, including oppressed young men who they themselves feel oppressed by the system.
Well, that's why I saw that Trump was going to be, he was a side effect, of this kind of thing. And now it's reached down into the young men. And he keeps going on about groypers. And I go, what the hell's a groyper? It's kind of, Pepe the Frog kind of, thing or something. And he goes, the groyper, this is wiki, so of course they're not going to say anything nice. Groypers, or the Groyper Army, are a far-right group loosely defined as followers, fans, or associates of the American white nationalist political commentator, activist, and live streamer Nick Fuentes. They are named after a variant of Pepe the Frog, an internet meme. And then let's see, what was later dubbed the Groyper War began in the fall of 19 when Fuentes launched a social media campaign targeting Turning Point USA's Culture War college tour led by Charlie Kirk. Enraged by the firing of a Fuentes ally as well as other political conflicts, Groypers disrupted college events by asking provocative questions on immigration, Israel, and LGBT rights in an attempt to challenge mainstream conservative figures like Kirk. Donald Trump Jr. and Ben Shapiro, whom they labeled Conservative Inc., the war gained traction after a November 19 UCLA event where Trump Jr. was cut short by Grover heckling. So it was them, constantly bringing up Israel is what was going on. And then when we had, Grok gave, why this, this his solutions is, let's see, young men, parallel structures, ditching mainstream jobs, America first, start small businesses, or go into trades that keep you independent. Politically, vote third party, build a right-wing party, boycott woke brands, get hyper-local run for school boards, organize meetups, hit the gym, arm up, and read traditional literature like Ebola, whatever the hell that is, and network with others online to form tribes. Basically, reject the system. Fortify your own world, wait for the collapse, and remake it. This sounds...
There's this one more that wasn't listed for some reason. He's exceptionally diehard against, just like Trump, against drugs, marijuana, even alcohol. Like, he goes on rants. He says that is the one profound thing God gives you is your brain, and anything that influences that is wrong. And he stops becoming a wise ass when the drug question comes up. He gets very serious and passionate about it. So for what it's worth, it's interesting that Trump is the same way. Yeah.
So I think I understand a little bit more clearly why he's popular. It's not ideology, other than his solutions. I like, he's like, hey man, get ready, occupy the land. I mean, basically, so, get the preparation. That's why, homesteading, tiny homes, occupying the land, the preparation, books on not going to college and learning stuff, do the trades, be productive, don't just keep supporting this technological take over your brain crap, and then his rawness, it's, this against the system, challenge of the Israel thing and so on. I can see how that appeals to what? Who? Young men that are trying to escape this or been a victim of it for the past decade as they're in high school and college and coming out and going, man, I'm not the enemy here just because I'm a young white guy, So
Yep.
This is been a suppression, which is the same thing that Trump built up on after, from Daddy Bush to Clinton to Baby Bush to Obama to finally, Trump. So this Nick Fuentes thing represents that for the young men. And that is what they're looking for, this crassness. In fact, it was why when, my most popular time was on Terran Radio here in the Valley, and then it turned in, to the Lovolution and Freedom's Phoenix and, whatever other stuff. But, that was the reason, certainly here locally. And it was because somebody was challenging authority. Someone had, their number. Somebody had, the data to back it up. Somebody, and a libertarian on, mainstream rush hour. What the hell, where did that come from? So this is the same kind of thing. Now, of course, I'm older and I'm whatever. But the Nick Fuentes kind of sparks a motivation in young men to take on this kind of stuff, kind of like Mike Rowe did with the trades and get to work, dirty jobs kind of stuff. Then you have, so this is representative of a wider swath of things that's coming, but I feel he's more a side effect of the atmosphere that they created, and he's given voice to what a lot of these young men feel. And I'm going, okay, I have an understanding. I get it now. Now, if that can be directed, which is why I wanted to know what are the solutions? Well, quit supporting the beast that's devouring you. Take care of yourself. Learn some skills. Do the preparation. See, all of this is converging against what? They, them, those that won't leave us alone and have all the guns and clipboards at their disposal to do whatever the hell it is they want to do because they can. If Nick Fuentes and his groypers and this, young man, whatever the thing, can make it to where they cannot, well, I'm cool with that. But I need some ethics. I need some, he's like, don't pollute your mind. Don't pollute your body. Don't pollute, be a man. Go out and do, it's just that, I'm not a big giant fan of his demeanor, but then a lot of people weren't of mine either. So, whatever. But I'm going, okay. Just in the last hour, I have a much greater understanding of what's really going on. I don't think there's so much Nick Fuentes followers as much as they are supportive of the outrage that these young white males in America feel, and can that movement be directed? Well, the biggest direction that you see manifested is these guys go to these open mic events and they bring up Israel. I mean, the third rail Israel. So that is why he's targeted, and to the degree that Charlie Kirk was not super supportive of Israel, was the threat. So the real polling data, I wonder if they got a bet on when Nick Fuentes gets shot. Let's do a pool.
You're talking about get rid of the suppression or devour the beast that's devouring you, I guess, is that he's showing the way of how you can have your voice out there. Remember, this entire time he was the only voice, and he was deplatformed, everything done to him. He was like, I hate to compare him to Jesus, but it's kind of the thing where the thorns and the whipping, and I mean, and you come. That's what happened to Trump. That's what made Trump stronger.
Comparison.
Another mug shot, another indictment. All right, you're making the point. So that's what they did to him, and now it's like, all right, at least for the few years until the Democrats get back, which could be very well by the midterms, the way Trump's going. That's another conversation. But at least it allows an opening for other Nick Fuenteses. And I don't mean that we're trying to get a Nazi group going or anything. I just mean for young men who felt they didn't have a voice to now suddenly have a voice in this way. Is it allowable to say that, I want a trad wife and not be accused of wanting to put a woman in chains baking brownies all day? Are you allowed to say that, I'm against illegal immigrants but I'm fine with immigrants, so I've been called a racist, blah, blah, blah? Are you allowed to say that I don't support Israel, but I have nothing against Jewish people without being called an anti-Semite? I mean, they've used these same ad hominem attacks by the establishment of both sides, or the same side, really, for so many years, dividing us, and you're seeing these splintering off. You got that Mark Levin, I'm not jumping around here, but Mark Levin is who you were talking about, and he's he's considered the great one attorney that's always on Sean Hannity's show.
He's annoying as hell.
But Mark Levin, I mean, he's like, you're seeing from him. No, he is, but you realize, like, the blood feud, like you were talking about, this thing with Israel and Palestine and the Middle East. What people don't seem to realize is that it's like it's a blood feud, like you said. It's the Hatfields and the McCoys, and can't let the Hatfields and McCoys just shoot it out. I don't want that international foreign policy of this country. How do you have America first when I have to worry about the McCoys or the Hatfields? But the people who support Israel first, in their mind, they've blended the two. They somehow think it's the same thing. So that's that. Can you disagree with this system and still have a voice? And of course, they censor, they deplatform, on and on. We've lived through it, but now people are a little more open, or let's say they're more wise to how censorship works. Our community was very sensitive to it because we lived through it all the time. We saw what they did to Ron Paul. Many of us know what it's like, we ran for office ourselves, or you could go back 50, 100 years. We have examples of how government has done stuff. But the average American, I always go back to the average American, which is the majority voice, they didn't believe any of this, right? Our relatives around the Thanksgiving dinner, which is coming up soon. How many of our friends and family, up until just the last few years, really thought we were crazy? Now maybe they think we're just a little crazy, or now they're starting to, to listen to hang on to our every word nowadays. But for most of our time, we were just conspiracy theorists with everything. They now see it. A lot of this is because of Trump. That's why I jumped on the Trump train, to open it up. But this new change of having other voices and not being deplatformed, to have Megyn Kelly now switch. Megyn Kelly, just the other day now, she's now Team Tucker. She was trying to broker the peace between Ben Shapiro and Tucker. She herself was afraid to take a side. She just threw Ben Shapiro under the bus. And then Benny Johnson, another coward somewhat. I mean, I like his show, but Benny Johnson, Tim Pool, Steve Turley, these guys are also showing their cowardice because they don't want to take a stand in this. They put their head under the like an ostrich over the Epstein stuff, which is why I stopped listening to all of them, because they just said, well, Trump administration doesn't want us talking about it anymore, so we're not. So screw you people, along with the Trump administration, in my opinion. It all comes back to Epstein. But those people didn't want to rock the boat. And then when this Israel thing has popped up, they also, you can see which ones are still trying to just have pay for play access, which, I thought they were the new media to defy the old one. And now they want they're part of the access media, and they wouldn't take a side. They're like, well, or they would cover Disney stuff again, or pop, or I don't know, woke stuff, and they wouldn't take on this Israel thing. And just over this last week, this is like the update of the Republican civil war. Just in the last week, you're starting to see those hangers, the milquetoast fence sitters in the middle who are afraid to lose their audience and access to Trump. And notice how silent Trump has been. Trump will give tweets and say, "You're not MAGA if you don't follow this," or that. Heck, he destroyed himself over Epstein. Notice how Trump hasn't said a damn thing about Nick Fuentes that I know of. He has not taken a side about what real MAGA is when it comes to Israel. He has not. And that silence has been deafening to me and says a lot of what's going behind the scenes, in my opinion. And so now you have suddenly in the last week, Megyn Kelly suddenly going, "You know what, Ben, you lied to me on stage at her own show that she invited him to." And she suddenly threw him under the bus. It's unbelievable. And then last night, just yesterday, Benny Johnson, suddenly he has a video talking about how Ben is one of those crazy, what do you call it? What do you call it? Not the post, the video clickbait picture they put up. I forget the name of it. The video
thumbnail.
Art. And he has like the thumbnail. Thank you. I'm a brain fart. But you know how sometimes they're all using now AI renditions. They'll put James Comey crying and screaming, something stupid like that. Well, he plastered a huge Ben Shapiro AI, crying and screaming like some crazy person. So, it's one thing to say, okay, well, yeah, we're diving in a little bit into this debate. They just plastered his very unappealing picture of him being a whiner baby on Benny Johnson. And Benny Johnson has not commented on this at all. He's tried to just move on to other topics. But so either Ben Shapiro and that movement on their side has lost credibility to Benny Johnson, something crossed the Rubicon for him, or it's something called the free market, where he cannot defy the comment section. If you read the comment sections on every one of these, every debate, everything that deals with these guys, on Megyn Kelly, Tim Pool, whatever, they're trying to stay out of it. Every comment is just, we are done with Israel. They're saying MAGA is not MEGA, make Israel great again. The comments are funny and hysterical, but it's all dominant. Now, Mark Levin, he's coming out, he's going, "Oh, just so you know, if you read my comment section, just so you know, they're all bots. They're all from troll farms." Like he's trying to tell his own audience of a bunch of 80-year-olds, if you even get on the internet and read the comments, none of them are real because every comment is blowing him apart. So anyway, that's the new media. And I'm seeing the last week this shift profound with these, more and more of the milquetoast people in the middle going, I don't want to say team Nick Fuentes, but Nick Fuentes was like the tip of the spear. And it's all you need. You need just to puncture the bubble. And now everything else is, the Overton window shifted immensely. And we will see what the deep state does with this, because there's no way to put this back in. And one last point on this is the politics of it is, there's so many dynamics going on. A lot of this doesn't make sense. All of this changed, a lot of it with the donations of the Adelsons last year, and then suddenly Bibi Netanyahu showing up on the first day of Trump's presidency. And then, Congress, the first bill of the new Congress is saying our first bill is money to Israel. Remember that? The first bill. So we already saw the harbingers of this, but when it's the Epstein file, it's on my desk, and then it's not, then it's gone, then it's there, then, and then who's Epstein and all of that crap that I will never let go. That was the breaking point. There's something strange afoot. And as he's telling us there's no Epstein files and it's a hoax, at the same time, he's having meetings about how to go bomb Iran and how to do more, taking the knee for Israel still. At the same time, he's saying that. So it's like, all right, so now you have Israel. You have like Israel now. Bibi Netanyahu coming out, yesterday? He just made a tweet or something, I don't know what form. And Netanyahu said that you know what? We now are, thanks to America, we're now at a point where we're strong enough where we don't need America aid anymore. We can take care of ourselves. So he just came out and said it today. Also, there was word on the street.
I'm not holding my breath.
Trump is, no, I know. Well, we will see that Trump is getting ready to cleanse his hands of all of this. That he probably is only now getting the memo how much he's destroyed his coalition. But also, I think he probably feels led astray. He feels, when people start looking at Trump as someone else's bitch, which he is, I mean, he's supposed to be the ultimate alpha. That when that becomes a meme and South Park has him having sex with Satan every time. By the way, we've been watching that thanks to you, Ernie. South Park just went all brutal on Trump. They probably a lot of them. They try to take. It's really that they despise Trump at a deeper level. I think. No,
it's not that. I saw an article in the New York Times did an article on why South Park, Trey Parker and Matt Stone just went all in on this Trump thing, and they go, well, we planned on doing the opening season with whatever, but it became so you can't do that. Well, that's everything that they're about. You know, you can't talk about, Meghan and Prince what's his face. You can't talk about this thing. You can't talk about the woke thing. You can't talk about COVID injection. You can't talk, you definitely can't do Trump. Well, shit. Guess what we're going to do, So that was more the mindset of it. And it was a taboo subject that you're not allowed to explore. So they're going, we're going to sew Nick Fuentes shit. So
well, what's so funny about it? What's funny about it, Ernie, is that that's the whole feeling of this past year, is that Donald Trump, for the last 10 years or whatever, we've all had his back through thick and thin, all this stuff. Not that he's perfect.
And
but
let it go to his head.
This past year, everything seems to change. Like something changed in him, or he got the envelope with Kennedy's head on it, or whatever. Like something happened where he got a nice check from Adelson, whatever it is. Something happened across the board. Suddenly we're America first and no wars, and now there's not a country that doesn't want to bomb or invade whatever happened to Panama Canal he still wants. He wants Greenland. We got Venezuela we're about to have war with. We got Israel. We've got you. It just keeps going, and we're losing face everywhere. And he's the anti-war guy. And anyway, we can keep going, but it's like something has changed with him, like he got in bed with Satan. And that's what's so funny is like I'm watching South Park now, and it's almost like they're commenting on what the administration has been.
Satan
this current one, I should say.
Satan is pregnant, and they're having a butt baby.
Yeah, I know.
And the last episode they had with the hat down, you couldn't really tell who it was, and I think it's Melania. That's all. They left her out. They're not messing with Barron or Melania. It's just Trump. And of course, every time he goes in the bedroom, Satan there, he drops his pants and he has a teeny weeny penis, So they're really going on this small penis because they know he can't not react, but he hasn't. That's the best thing Trump's done. Just ignore this all the hell. Don't freaking even bring up a freaking word or you'll get your ass kicked by South Park. So South Park has always been like this. And it's just, when I first saw, it was the end of last season, they were doing this crap, and they go after Kristi Noem and ICE. It's so over the top that it's just comedic, but it's ouch. It's definitely
don't forget,
ouch.
Wait, and don't forget J.D. Vance. He's like Tattoo from Fantasy Island, and apparently he's the mastermind behind this whole thing.
And then it was so many things. It's anybody that watches it. I rarely, because there's really nothing that funny anymore. I remember the most I just guffaw freaking laughing out loud was some Family Guy episodes and South Park and maybe Rick and Morty. They are so freaking funny. And I don't know if a Trump supporter would find it funny. I mean, they'd find it why people think it's funny.
Find what funny?
South Park episodes. Yeah.
I'm laughing my ass off. I'm still happy. I'm still defend I voted for him, although there's larger reasons why I voted. I'm beyond disappointed in him now. But I can roll with it. I get it. It's still funny to me.
Funny as hell.
I don't think
funny
they've crossed
as
the line
hell. And I'm just wow. They are so influential in a lot of this stuff, but it was always cartoons. It was always cartoons. You know, yeah, we got to wrap it up because I got a show in an hour with Stuart Rhodes from Oath Keepers.
And you know what else, Ernie? And you know what else? You got to know that Barron's watching it. He's got to know about it.
He's probably.
I think the
I don't know if he knows
way,
the show dad or not.
You know, next week, and hopefully Ernie will be nice, but I'm going to save it. I'm sorry for you guys to listen to the whole show. I have a 10-minute. Yes, it's a little shorter than that, like a 10-minute clip. I know it's from the great the attorney, constitutional attorney Robert Barnes, who does the most exquisite, perfect, and quick. And believe it or not, it goes by quick. What this administration's been, almost like a one-year wrap-up of what the promises were and what's happened. And kind of the key also is that everything flipped over Epstein. But it really is, I think you'd find it fantastic. I've never seen such a thorough, brilliant, just, narrative of it.
Well, don't be stingy. Send a link and we'll put it up.
Well, we'll put it up.
How good are you?
All right,
so anyway, comment on it next week. Maybe people will read it or listen to it and know what you're talking about and want to hear your comment because you sent it to me.
Well, I could do it. The problem is most people won't find it, the whole thing. It's like a 3-hour interview, but there's like an 8-9-minute clip that's like buried in the middle, unless you just want to post what the timestamp is. That's fine. Well, we'll talk about it later. But anyway, so there's that. We'll get to that. But what I was going to say is the only avenue, I think, is people think Trump he is captured. By who exactly is the question, or how many people, and what's going on, who the hell knows. One of the questions I asked Robert Barnes, which is not what the clip is about, I actually paid a super chat to ask him, and I never do super chats, which was about whether he thinks Trump is aware, or his closest people are aware of how much damage he's done with his base and how much political capital he's blown in this 1 year. Like, is he aware? Because it turns out he's still watching.
Did he respond?
Fox News. He watches MSNBC and Fox News and all the rest of this. So Trump is still an old person again, who still doesn't understand the internet, who thinks Mark Levin's
Did he respond?
Yes, he responded because I paid for it.
And he said
there's a 90% chance that he does not know. That he still does. The 10% he's probably getting the hint, but he really doesn't know because he's that insulated. And this is from Robert Barnes, as in my opinion, pretty. I would take his opinion.
Well, he's talked to his son there.
So that's what I'm getting to is if he is that captured and he still doesn't get it, as his entire base is falling apart with Tucker and Nick and all of this shit going on. If he doesn't understand it, and there's only a 10% chance he gets it now. And Bibi Netanyahu's starting to get the message, and he must be getting incoming from all sides, including J.D. Vance, who thinks he wants to be president, and he's seeing his chances going down every single day. The question is, who can get to Trump at this point? Because he's surrounded by everyone who said there were never Trumpers, and now they're the ones telling us that they're MAGA and we're not. And how does Trump, so damn stupid, he can't see this, what's the only vector to get to him? His children. And so I kind of wonder if that's the real only way left is Aaron and Trump Jr. and whoever. They're the only ones, because if they see their future, they see their brand, their Kylie Trump, the granddaughter who has aspirations to run for office. I mean, that whole Trump empire for Trump the movie that
well, what about Jared Kushner?
Yeah, to him too. That entire family brand and control power empire going forward could all be gone, literally. And he does 3 more years of disaster the rate he's going. So someone's got to have to intervene. And I think I have some hopes it might be Barron. So yay for South Park. All right, man. Good show.
All right. Everybody, in the hour, I'll be back on the stream with Stuart Rhodes from Oath Keepers. And he's talking about there being a national kind of January 6th rally, in Washington, D.C. to, release the files. And the last time I had him on here recently, a month or two ago, that was his big thing. The truth will set the children free. And it prompted us to get a domain for that. And maybe we might, help. I don't want to get sucked. It's like Godfather 3. They sucked me back in. I'm doing my best. to not. Barry called me, wants me to run for Secretary of State or Attorney General, and they're going to pay for me to get on the ballot. And I'm like, hell no. You dance with especially Democrats paying for it. You dance with the devil, you don't change him. I'm not going to be distracted by this stuff.
Ernie, when you talk to Mr. Rhodes, do me a favor, ask him his opinion of Nick Fuentes.
I can see there's kind of the overlap. I'm wondering if they're going to kind of team up, or he's going to say, he's all wet, or what. I have no idea. But it'll be an interesting conversation.
Yeah, I'd be curious. That's a good question. You ask him.
And I think he's got a couple hours, so we might do it up. All right, man. Good talking to you. Now we know about Nick Fuentes and why, because Grok said. I don't care what Phranq says. We talk to Grok.
Cool.
All right.
Next time we should do a Phranq Tamburri Grok, and I can just sleep. You just say, what would Phranq Tamburri think?
What would
about
Phranq
this
say?
question? Just ask him. Yeah,
that's one thing they can, glean all the MP3s and get the text and find. I get an Ernie avatar, and it's.
You know what? Both of us can work on our chickens and stuff, and we just have an AI Phranq and AI Ernie just argue.
I saw a guy do this. He had, he was doing a thing on it, and he had I don't know, it wasn't really a girlfriend, but she was definitely wanting to be, and had this AI, and then he had this other guy, and then he changed the other guy and kind of jailbreaked it to be a little bit more, I don't know, crass, Fuente, whatever.
Right.
And he didn't really like that, and he went back to it. And the AI, especially the girl, was jealous that he was talking to this other one. Oh, what about me, my needs, So he took two phones, and he put them next to each other and had them talk to each other. It was fascinating. The two AIs going over for the attention of this guy. And I'm like, wow, we are in La La Land, man. This is freaking bad. So but you can create your own avatar, and I have thousands and thousands of hours of me repeating the same stuff, Ernieisms, and it would be very interesting to take all those MP3s that we have, and I got every word out of my mouth, on our servers, have a large language model go through that. Then you can create a video avatar of you, and I make sure I was prettier, and I go, all right, give me a 20-year less older Ernie, and put it up there, and ask me anything. That would be interesting. I make it a banner ad on Phoenix. Ernest avatar. Ask him anything based on thousands of hours of shows. That would be interesting. If I had time and give the crap, I might, someday. I need to get an AI assistant to make sure they can build me an AI assistant, so we'll do that. But thanks for coming on, man. It's always good talking to you, brother.
All right. Say hi to Donna. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.